For 40 years, I was the gatekeeper of a university girls' dormitory. Grandpa Wren, the harmless old man with no wife, no children, and a government welfare stamp where a family should be. The students never knew the math of me, that I had a wife once and twin daughters, and that 40 years ago all three of them went into a river and never came out. My wife had been carrying one of the twins to give away because we were too poor to feed both, and the river took the errand, the messenger, and the child. I spent 4 decades wandering the country with that receipt in my chest. Speculator, gambler, small-time boss, police station guest. A few years living with hunters in the minority mountains. Everything a man does when he's running from one Tuesday in 1983. And then someone said, "Changming, wake up, it's time to eat," in a voice I'd been hearing in dreams for 40 years. And I opened my eyes in a mud brick room with straw under the bed, wearing a patched cotton coat and cloth shoes stuffed with straw insoles, in a 25-year-old body that didn't ache anywhere. Home, 1983. Liugouzi Village, mountains on every side, 3 mu of allocated land, grain tax due, and nothing to eat. I walked into the main hall on legs I hadn't owned since Reagan's first term, and there they were, framed in the doorway like the photograph I never had. My wife, Lan Xueying, 21 years old, an educated city girl who'd given up her chance to return to the city to stay in the dirt with me, and 2 3.5-year-old milk dumplings named Lele and Tingting, hair yellow as dead grass from malnutrition, big round eyes peeking at me from behind the door. I said their names out loud for the first time in 40 years, to their faces. I laughed. Then I cried like a dam failing, and everyone politely assumed it was hunger. And the little ones, my daughters, my dead and returned daughters, took one look at their weeping father coming toward them with open arms and burst into tears. "Daddy, don't spank Lele's bottom. Ting-Ting will be good." That's the man I used to be, a short-tempered ditch digger who disciplined by hand and was feared by 2 toddlers who loved him anyway. Wonderful. Add it to the bill I came back to pay. Breakfast was the bill, itemized. 2 cracked enamel bowls, one of brownish sweet potato rice, dried strips already going musty, the food nobody in the future would feed to livestock, and one of wild vegetable paste, which in this house ranked as the luxury dish. My wife served the children first, gave me the entire vegetable paste as the working man's ration, and left herself 3 spoonfuls of moldy starch. The girls drooled at the paste and said nothing, because at 3.5 they had already learned not to ask. I sat there, a man who had eaten in every province of a rich future, and divided my bowl between 2 children while their mother protested. And then the children held their spoons up to her mouth. "Mom, eat, it's delicious." And I understood that everyone at this table had spent years secretly starving themselves for everyone else. A perfect closed loop of hunger and love. Then my wife wiped her eyes and said the sentence I'd been reborn to intercept. "There's not much food left. I'm taking Ting-Ting to Aunt Jo's house today." Today, the river errand, the one from which I'd once collected 3 bodies. My whole body went through it like a live wire. "We're not sending the child anywhere," I said, in a voice that surprised both of us. The voice of a man whose word was final because it had 40 years of grief behind it. "Stay home with the girls. Don't go anywhere." She stared at me. This was not the husband she'd fed that morning, and nodded. And just like that, with one sentence, the accident that had defined my entire first life simply didn't happen. No river, no bodies, just a Tuesday, saved. Now all I had to do was earn the right to keep it saved, because the trigger hadn't been fate, it had been arithmetic. 4 mouths, 3 mu of land, a grain jar you could hear the bottom of. Cancel the giveaway without fixing the arithmetic, and the same Tuesday circles back with a different date on it. So I went to the back of the house with a kitchen cleaver and did the first sensible thing of my second life. I made weapons. Every house in Liugouzi grows bamboo out back. I cut it, split it, tempered the strips in the still warm stove for spring, and built myself a bow and a dozen sharpened bamboo arrows. Toy grade, honestly. No good against anything bigger than a rabbit, but rabbits were exactly the tax bracket I was starting in. Because here's the asset column nobody in this village could see. 1983 has no gun ban and no hunting ban. The county runs an official purchasing station that pays cash for game and pelts. Lan Chang Mountain sits an hour from my door, crawling with animals precisely because everyone's too hungry and too scared to work it. The local proverb runs, "In the mountains, you hunt or you get hunted." And the neighboring hunter village legend of the week was Old Wong, 40 years experience, whose intestines a wild boar had recently redistributed across 2 miles of trail. My village's entire risk analysis was delivered to me at the village gate by old Sixth Master Joe. "Hunting's not for you, boy. Go back to the production brigade." And the production brigade paid ditch diggers in some food sometimes. I nodded politely, went home for the axe, and walked into the mountains anyway. First shift, honest results. 2 hours of frozen trudging past the outskirts of Kaoshan Village, the hunter's hamlet up in the rocks. Poorer than us, which takes talent. Then a mountain spring because animals bank where the water runs. A fat 5-pound rabbit humiliated me through the trees. A meadow full of wild chickens didn't. First arrow hit. The flock exploded. 2 more arrows on instinct. 2 birds down. 4+ pounds of protein in the sack. Better, their nesting ground. Several clutches of eggs in the hay. I looted nothing and marked the spot. Leave the eggs, and the flock comes back. A starving man eats the nest. A reborn man farms it. 2 more empty hours taught me the honest version of this trade. Seeing game and catching game are different professions. And I walked home at sunset with 2 birds and a plan. The homecoming purchased something better than meat. I stood in my own yard holding the sack behind my back and ran history's cheapest hostage negotiation. If you 2 let Daddy hold you, chicken legs. My daughters, who had never eaten a chicken leg in their lives, who conferred in whispers and concluded, "I'd even be willing to get a spanking," walked into my arms on the strength of a rumor. 90 seconds later, bottoms verifiably unspanked, they were squirming and giggling against my chest, and 40 years of dormitory nights dissolved in a courtyard that smelled of snow. Then I cooked, over my wife's escalating panic at the oil expenditure, 1 reckless ladle of the rapeseed my sister had gifted us, wild chicken twice, stir-fried hot in the iron pot, and stewed golden in a resurrected clay pot buried in the stove embers. The smell pulled the girls off their pheasant feather games and pinned them to the stove edge by the nose. And at that wobbling 3-legged table, my daughters each got a drumstick, held them up first to their mother's mouth. Mom takes a bite, then Lele takes a bite. And when they caught me rationing myself to soup, 2 greasy little fists came across the table with meat for Daddy. In 2 lifetimes, it was the first time my children had ever fed me. I ate it. It outranked every banquet I attended in 40 years of the future. But 1 chicken doesn't fix arithmetic. Markets fix arithmetic. So before dawn, I was on the road with the surviving bird. A live chicken sells, a dead one begs. Walking the 20 li to the township, and its lone, state-run restaurant, faded couplets peeling off the door, state-owned, hanging on by rust and pride. The manager, Zhao Jianjun, 40s, limp, face like a 50-year ledger of small cheats, took 1 look at my patched coat and priced me as a mountain simpleton. 6 cents a pound. I'll round up to 1.4 yuan. Aren't you lucky you found me? County price for wild chicken? 75 cents a pound. The man was skimming 20% off a beggar's bird and smiling about the service. Here's what 40 years of speculating, gambling, and police stations are actually for. I didn't argue the price. I picked up my chicken mid-sentence and walked. Just checking prices. I've got plenty of game at home. I'd rather walk to the county for that money. And then I stood back and watched the arithmetic eat him alive. Cheating 1 bird is a hobby, but a steady supplier walking out the door is a business hemorrhage. He chased me on his limp. 61 cents. I kept walking. 62. The hook was in. Now to set it. He climbed his own ladder rung by rung. 65, 70, and finally, through gritted teeth, the genuine article. 75 cents. County price. Final. I took 2 test steps toward the door, confirmed no pursuit. That's how you find a man's true ceiling. You walk until he stops chasing, then turned around with a sunny smile. Since you're so sincere. The look on his face was worth 10 cents a pound by itself. This honest-looking mountain kid just out-merchanted me in my own shop. $1.73, plus a side deal that mattered more than the cash. I traded him for ration coupons. meat stamps, food coupons, and one candy coupon, which I took without a heartbeat's hesitation, because somewhere in a mud brick courtyard were two girls who had watched other children eat candy their whole short lives. Then I ran the whole 1983 economy on $1.73, and let me give you the era in one price tag. At the butcher's stall, ribs cost less than fat. 79 cents for ribs, 86 for pure pork fat, because a country with no oil in its stomach doesn't want protein, it wants grease. And beef went cheaper than everything since mutton's gamey, beef's mushy, pork's delicious, but who has money? I bought a pound of fat for rendering, 2 gin of real rice, 1 of flour, matches, a pinch of sugar, and a dime of hard candy, 7 pieces to the fen, and walked out worth 3 cents. And on the way home, Fortune handed me a weapons program. 2 village boys playing in the road with a 50-centimeter bayonet off a Japanese Type 38 rifle dug up on some back hill. A blade like that against a bamboo bow was the difference between hunting and praying. Purchase price, 2 candies. The big brother hesitated for exactly as long as it took the little brother to tug his sleeve and whisper, "I want candy." Was it ethical? I prefer the official version. I removed a dangerous edged weapon from the custody of minors and compensated them at market rate. Everyone went home happy, one of us armed. The homecoming was an ambush of the best kind, 2 small warheads launching off the ground into my arms before the gate finished opening, because one evening of unspanked hugging had already rewritten their entire threat assessment of Daddy. Tingting's dry grass hair scrubbing my neck, Lele announcing she'd report to Mom that Dad called her cute, since it had never once happened before and needed witnesses. Then I produced 4 candies and learned what my daughters were made of. Lele, 3.5 years old, holding more sugar than she'd owned in her lifetime, counted them out on her tiny palm and ran the division herself. 1 for Mommy, 1 for Lele, 1 for Tingting, and 1 for Daddy, and held the 4th up to me with eyes you couldn't refuse under torture. I'd planned that count differently. I ate the candy. It went down past the lump in my throat, barely. A house where the toddlers audit dessert for fairness is a house that deserved a better man than the one I'd been, and was about to get one if I had to drag him out of myself by force. The lard ceremony sealed the family's new religion. Fat into the pot, sugar pinch, and salt, the smell of rendering pork rolling through a courtyard that hadn't smelled oil in months. Both girls abandoned their pheasant feathers and materialized at the stove like it was magnetized, my wife snatching Tingting back from splash range. Then the sacrament. Crispy cracklings straight off the pot, blown cool, 1 salted, 1 sugared, straight into 2 little mouths. Awoo! Followed by the solemn tasting verdicts. Lele, team sweet, Tingting, team salty. And then, inevitably, the enforcement action. Daddy can't be biased. You have to feed Mommy too. My wife tried, Mom doesn't like it, on a 3-year-old prosecutor and got demolished with evidence. Lele has never seen Mom eat it. She saves the good food for us. Cornered by her own daughters, blushing to her ears in an era where spouses barely touched in daylight, she finally tucked her hair back and let me feed her 1 crackling. And I stood there, stunned all over again at what I'd married. A face that outclassed every campus queen and future celebrity of the coming 40 years, wearing patched cotton in a mud kitchen, telling me she'd take the salty one, sugar's expensive. I made her a promise over that crackling jar, plain words, no poetry. You and the children will live well now. She bit her lip and said, to the floor. In this house, that's a signed contract. The mountain, meanwhile, reminded me who sets the schedule. Afternoon expedition. An hour in, freezing rain, the kind that stiffens your knife hand and turns a poor man's coat into a death sentence if you linger. I gritted my way to yesterday's chicken meadow on the theory the flock had returned. It hadn't. Fine. The nest egg clause activates. 23 wild chicken eggs out of the haystacks, minus 2 that something else had already invoiced, bundled inside my coat against my chest. And when I came squelching home through the drizzle, half frozen, I found my entire net worth standing at the courtyard gate in the rain. My wife, with her cheeks whipped red, scanning the road, flanked by 2 little ones clamped to her legs who'd refused to wait indoors, and Tingting spotting me first and launching down the lane through the raindrops with her sister behind her. 3 silly girls waiting in the cold for a man who used to come home drunk on his own bitterness. I handed over the eggs, let myself be scolded into dry clothes, and filed the day honestly. Hunting revenue, 0. Everything else, beyond appraisal. That evening invented our family's first tradition. Rain outside, the house dark by 4, so I lit the little heating pot, the square-framed iron basin you park your feet against, and roasted 7 or 8 wild chicken eggs right in the coals, over my wife's protests about the extravagance. Roasting eggs when they could be stretched into soup. The shells popped, the smell went around the room, and my family of 4 sat in a ring of firelight, eating hot eggs off wooden sticks, Tingting offering me bites of hers, Lele reporting that egg yolk was Mom's favorite, while I noticed what the firelight showed me. Lele's cotton shoes had split open at the toes, bare little feet on the wooden frame, and the child hadn't said a word about being cold, because in this house, nobody ever says they're cold or hungry. They just quietly give their share to someone else. My wife was already sewing the shoes by feel in the half-dark. I sat there doing what I do now instead of brooding, engineering. Because the rain had exposed the flaw in my whole operation, a hunter with no shelter in the mountains is a tourist. Every day I walked an hour in, an hour out, lost the noon hours when game moves, and fled at the first weather. The fix was standard practice among the hunting peoples I'd lived with in my first life. A hunting cabin. A base. So next morning I went up with the axe and built one, picked a wind-sheltered spot 400 meters off a spring, water is where the animals bank, cleared the snow, and put up a birch pole frame in under 3 hours. 20 trunks felled and dragged, thick ones driven in as posts, cross-braced, roofed with layered dragon whisker grass, the poor man's waterproofing. The same grass the village weaves into free raincoats, lashed down with old vines and weighted with poles. Inside, a fire on the cleared dirt to dry the ground. The ash doubles as snake and insect repellent. Old knowledge, free of charge. A raised bed on 4 stakes padded with ula grass, the Changbai treasure that pounds into wool-soft insulation and has kept poorer men than me alive through worse winters. By afternoon, I owned real estate. 1 room, mountain view, rent-free, predator-resistant, and, the part that mattered, a warehouse for game and a launch pad for the day I dare stay out overnight. Because the real money in Lan Chang Mountain isn't rabbits. It's boar. It's bear. It's the thing I don't say out loud because saying tiger without a gun is how the mountain teaches you the difference between a tiger in a proverb and a tiger behind you. The locals say top predators like to be the old 6, then it at your back. People vanish in this range every single year. I built my house and I minded my exits. Then the mountain paid me my first real wage, in fur. A red pine grove behind the ridge turned out to be full of chipmunks, the striped mountain squirrels the county purchasing station buys processed pelts of for the export trade. Here's the arithmetic nobody in my starving village had done. 1 small chipmunk pelt trades for roughly a pound of pork. The state sells them abroad for foreign exchange, and the meat, roasted, is a delicacy on top. And chipmunks are an archer's game. A gun shreds the pelt and empties the forest with the bang. My silent bamboo arrows took them off the trunks headshot clean, fur intact, woods undisturbed. I dropped 3 by lunch. Each one bled immediately. Throat cut on the spot. Leave the blood in and the meat's ruined. Craft is craft. Roasted 2 over the fire pit for a working lunch. Crackling skin, pine nut scented meat, better than half the restaurants of my previous life. Then scraped, washed, and racked the pelts to dry in my new cabin like the startup inventory they were. 2 more pelts before dusk. 5 pelts, day 1. That's over a month of production brigade ditch wages, hanging on a rack I built with an axe. And the grove kept handing me bonuses like it was courting me. A chipmunk burrow, because chipmunks hoard like their field mouse cousins, whose burrows literally kept famine survivors alive, surrendered a full pound of hazelnuts, pine nuts, and pecans. A second cache doubled it. Hard-working little chipmunk. Pity about your family. A hunter's eulogy. A frost-dried wild grapevine, sour garbage in October, but wind-dried on the vine past 2 frosts, it turns into sweet, sharp raisins nobody in the village knows to harvest, filled a wooden tube I hollowed on the spot. A long-tailed wild chicken practically volunteered, and I took it wing-shot on purpose. A live bird sells at full price at Zhao Jianjun's, and my archery had officially come all the way back. Then a second one on the walk out. And at the spring, as I cleaned my pelts, I looked up into the eyes of the day's most interesting discovery. A white fox. Pure white, licking the chipmunk fat off my scraping stone. It bolted. I stood there doing merchant math. White fox fur trades for dozens of chipmunk pelts, export grade, rich man's collar. And then a slower kind of math, because it crept back the second I turned my back and stole the entrails I'd left, which meant it was hungry, bold, and local. Come closer next time, I told the trees, and left the invitation deliberately vague even to myself. A pelt is one payday, but a fox that knows where the food is, that might be something else. Homecoming that night was a merchant unpacking a caravan, raisins into little hands. So sweet, Daddy. Tingting first, always straight into the mouth, quality control by toddler. Half a basin of nuts poured out to gasps, and one raw hazelnut confiscated from Tingting's mouth mid-swallow. It needs cooking, silly goose. Tingting isn't stupid, noted for the record. A wild chicken for tomorrow's market, chipmunk meat into the salt. Then my daughters put me in a chair by the fire and serviced me, Lele solemnly pounding my back, like I do for Mommy, Tingting swinging her little fists at my legs, and I sat there, being maintained by two people whose combined weight wouldn't stop a door, thinking, their faces already had color in them. 2 days of oil and eggs, and the gray-yellow was turning rose. It will take months to make them properly chubby. I have months. I have, for the first time in either life, exactly what it takes. One more thing about those first days, quieter than the rest, and more important. My wife and I were near strangers in the way of that era, a city-educated girl and a ditch digger who'd barely exchanged 2 sentences a day across years of shared poverty, sleeping separately since the twins came, an invisible wall of class and habit standing in the mud house with us. The old me had accepted the wall as furniture. The new me had spent 40 years learning exactly what it costs. So I started dismantling it the only way that works, not with speeches, but brick by brick. Cooking beside her, feeding her first, lecturing her for waiting in the rain, saying, "You and the children will live well," and then getting up every dawn to make it arithmetic instead of poetry. She'd taken to watching me lately with a look I remembered from 1979 and hadn't seen since. Good. Let the wall worry. Round 2 with Zhao Jianjun opened with the man's face doing a full weather cycle. I'd stood him up. He'd waited all day for my promised caravan of game and gotten nothing. And when I strolled in with one sagging sack, he cycled through rage, suspicion, and greed in the time it takes to fake a smile. This kid cheated me. But this kid is also my only supplier. Wild chickens are delicate, Brother Zhao. They die overnight. So I bring each one fresh the moment I catch it. From now on, everything I hunt comes straight to you. Absolute nonsense, delivered with the sincerity of a state broadcast. And he bought it, because I'd priced his character correctly the first day. A man who plans to cheat you needs to believe you're honest. He took the bird at the fixed 75, and when he grumbled I might be playing him again, I picked up my chicken and started for the door, and silently counted. 1. Wait, nobody said we're not buying. 1. I didn't even need 2. The township's shrewdest operator was now my regular customer at county prices, retrained in 3 visits, like a stray dog taught to sit. The proceeds went into infrastructure, nails, a spatula, sandpaper, no wire in the whole township for snares noted for the county list. Because the mountain had left me a message. Back at the cabin, the dragon whisker roof was disturbed. Something had been up there in the night, testing my architecture, and been defeated by my vine lashings. This time. And the calendar was running. March means the bears wake up, winter-starved, weak, and therefore more dangerous, wandering wide for food, and a thatched shack is a bear's lunchbox. So for 4 days, I ran a 2-shift economy, cold mornings and evenings felling 20-centimeter logs, warm noons harvesting the red pine grove. The cabin became a fortress, log walls mortise and tenoned and nailed tight, a log door on beam hinges, stone and earth packing at the foundations, and a proper roof. Ula grass mixed into dug clay, plastered, smoothed, planked over, plus a hollow tree chimney. When I was done, a bear could take his frustrations out on the walls all afternoon, and I'd nap through it. And the noon shifts stacked the war chest. 5, 6 chipmunks a day, 8 on the best morning. 25 pelts curing on my racks, plus 2 more wild chickens, 2 rabbits. Rabbits you sell whole, the fur's big but cheap. Every animal in these mountains has its own bizarre price logic, and knowing it is the profession. And one rabbit that literally ran into my cabin and froze in the corner from sheer self-inflicted panic. I picked it up by the ears like a delivery. 25 pelts was the threshold. Time to walk the 50 li to the county purchasing station. Time, finally, to talk about a gun. The mountain heard gun and decided to underline the request. Dusk, walking out, pelts on my hip, and a grunt from the brush that turned my blood to slush. A 200-pound lone boar, mud-armored like a tank, tusks out past its lips, close enough that if my path had wandered 2 meters left, I'd have stepped on it. First pig, second bear, third tiger, the mountain ranks them, and not because a pig outfights a tiger, but because pigs are everywhere, and it's pigs that killed Old Wang of Kaoshan Village. 40 years of experience dragged 2 miles by his own intestines. I backed away slow. It charged anyway. What followed was the least dignified foot race of both my lives. Me sprinting through the timber with a tank gaining, cutting angles that didn't shake it, its snout close enough that when I finally dove sideways, I felt the wind of the tusks, one desperate slash across its flank as I rolled. Result, a scratch on the mud armor and a boar upgraded from angry to personal. And then the only move left on the board, a tree. I hit it like a drowning man hits driftwood, hauled myself up as the tusks arrived, and then the tree and I learned together what 200 pounds at ramming speed feels like. Boom! The trunk bucked so hard I nearly came off into its mouth. Again. This was the thin timber north slope, no barrel-thick trunks to laugh from, and I'd seen boars snap bull-width trees with their teeth, which it began, methodically, to do. So I climbed to a branch with dead frozen hands, thinking about 3 people at a courtyard gate, unslung the bamboo bow, and started the world's most underpowered siege. Toy arrows off a tank's skull, one bouncing clean off the scalp while the boar redoubled its demolition. I shot until my quiver was empty, -1, aiming at the head on faith and moonlight, and then a squeal, real pain, and the tank broke off and crashed away into the dark, leaving a pool of blood on the snow. Some arrow had found something soft. 200 pounds of pork, wounded, unclaimable in the dark. I mourned it like a lost wallet, even as my hand shook. And then I got lost. Pitch black, adrenaline spent, an hour of wrong turns steered only by old instinct, fell twice, soaked through, frozen, the mountain collecting its fee for the lesson. No more bamboo. Sell the pelts, buy the gun. And at the end of the black road home, a silhouette. My wife, out alone in the freezing dark looking for me, having already lulled the girls to sleep with a negotiated treaty. If Lele sleeps, Daddy will be back when she wakes, accepted by both parties with raised little fists. She recognized me by my footsteps before she could see me. That's what years of a marriage do, even a silent one, and then saw the blood soaking my chest and front and went white. Boar's blood, it turned out, smeared climbing down. My actual injury was one long branch scratch across the back. But watch what she did with it, this shy girl who'd never once raised her voice at me. Overrode my, I'll sleep it off, with a flat, take off your shirt. If it infects, you're bedridden, and then who feeds my daughters? Marched to the kitchen and came back with her face smudged black like a tabby cat, because she'd been scraping soot from the bottom of the pot. Bai Cao Shuang, the old remedy, a poorhouse's antiseptic, gathered bare-handed in the dark for me. She cleaned the wound, powdered it, ordered me into my clothes, and then tried to say the thing I could feel coming. Hunting is too dangerous. Maybe you should. I cut it off gently with the only true answer. For you and the girls, I'm not afraid of anything. And I am never giving away our child. She went quiet, the quiet of a woman who wants 2 incompatible things. So I broke it the new way, teasing. Don't worry about me. Worry about the boar. If it hadn't gotten dark, you'd be eating him tomorrow. Braggart. But she was smiling when she fled to heat my dinner, and when I caught her wrist at the door and wiped the soot off her cheek with a towel, she held still for it, 3 whole seconds, before escaping into the kitchen. The wall lost a row of bricks that night, and past midnight the wall lost another. I woke to my blanket moving, two small hands hauling at it in the dark, and found Lele and Tingting at my bedside with a stool they'd dragged from the main hall, mid-mountaineering expedition up my too tall bed, because they'd woken, found no Daddy, and come to check the inventory. Lele wanted to look at Daddy's bed, but Lele can't climb up. The blanket pulling had been phase 1 of the ascent. I hauled them both in, one against each side, warm as 2 loaves of bread, and offered them the night in Daddy's bed, and was immediately, brutally counteroffered. No. Lele sleeps with Mommy. Mommy smells so good. Ting-Ting hugs Mommy when she sleeps. Ah. Maybe Daddy also wants to hug Mommy when he sleeps, I muttered to the ceiling, and the ceiling declined to comment. Lele was already probing for the stool with her toes. Ting-Ting's legs came up short of the floor entirely. "Wah, Daddy, Ting-Ting can't get down!" And I airlifted the inspection team back to their mother's room and lay there grinning in the dark like an idiot. Checked on at midnight by 2 people who can't reach the floor. In my first life, I died with no one outside the door. Let the record reflect the correction. The county expedition launched at dawn, 25 pelts and the live game balanced on a shoulder pole. 1 boiled wild chicken egg in my pocket that my wife had sacrificed from the last of the clutch so I wouldn't starve on the road. And I walked out of the village straight through a live broadcast of my own reputation. The auntie chorus at the village gate, at full volume. "Isn't that Chongming? Hasn't shown at the brigade in days. Used to be a hard worker, now he loaves. Poor wife digging wild vegetables with 2 kids while he wanders." 40 years ago, that talk would have curdled in me for a week. Now, I smiled and lengthened my stride. Gossip is the tax on privacy, and privacy was exactly what my back trail hunting route was buying me. Let the ledger speak later. 25 li of frozen road, not 1 ox cart to hitch, and Guangzhou County, 1983. Red brick streets, the occasional 2-story building, bicycles, and 3 Dongfang Hong tractors rumbling past like visiting royalty. A tractor cost more than a house. I filed the ambition under later, decades. But before the purchasing station, I made a detour that was pure future knowledge. A north side alley, and a skinny, sharp-eyed young man in a suspiciously bulky overcoat. Wang Wei, the cigarette peddler. I knew him from my first life, knew, too, how his story ends, if nothing changes. Arrested for speculation, just as the world was about to make his exact skills legal. Today, he was just my supplier. He cracked the overcoat like a smuggler's museum. Rows of cigarettes from half the provinces of China, economy to Zhanghua, and nearly fainted when the patched beggar in front of him ordered a pack of John. Ying Chun and a pack of peony, the city cadre smoke. 65 cents. Not a vice. Ammunition. Because in this handshake economy, the purchasing station buyer doesn't set prices. He sets moods, and a pelt's grade floats on whether he likes your face. Watch the mechanism work. Outside the station, which announced itself by smell a building away, 1 Ying Chun cigarette bought me a debrief from a young seller storming out cursing. Master Wang, 50s, runs acquisitions, chronically foul. Pelt ceiling 85 fen, floor 70, mood dependent. Inside, your pelts are so-so, some aren't dry, 75. Robbery, delivered with a yawn. 1 offered Ying Chun later. I misjudged. Decent pelts, 80. And then I slid the whole unopened pack of peony across and watched a 50-year-old man's soul leave his body. Nobody had ever tipped him a full pack of what he couldn't afford himself. And the appraisal completed its pilgrimage. These are top-quality pelts. 85 fen, highest I can give. 25 pelts, 21.25 yuan. 2 big Unity 10 notes and change, plus the words I'd actually come to buy. Come back anytime, kid. I'll tell you what pelts I'm looking for. A supplier relationship at the county's cash spigot purchased for 37 cents of tobacco. The state-run restaurant took the chickens and rabbit at Zhao Jianjun's own quoted prices. Credit where due, the township shark hadn't lied about the county rate, which told me something useful about which lies he tells. 6 yuan more. Days total, 27.25 yuan, a ditch digger's half year on a shoulder pole. I celebrated like a man who'd been poor twice, 4 meat buns at a fen apiece from an old private vendor. First legal private buns of the new era, stuffed fat, and I stood there getting misty over a bun. I ate all 4 on the spot after 11 fasting hours, mourned that they'd be cold before I could carry any home to 3 people who'd never tasted county buns, and swore the family would come here themselves one day soon. Then the supply and marketing cooperative, the county one, triple the township's size, with a wall of air rifles I ignored. 20+ yuan for a lead pellet toy that tickles a boar. No. For wire, snares, finally, a kerosene lamp with oil for a house that had been running on moonlight, and 2 fen of round candy. Then 50 li home in the dark, on legs made of complaint. And at the gate, my finest fatherhood crisis to date. 2 white shapes came flying at me through the dark, and I, drained to the marrow, gently held them off because I genuinely couldn't lift them, and both girls went off like air raid sirens. Daddy doesn't want Lele anymore, wah! Daddy doesn't want Tingting either! A synchronized duet of heartbreak, tears free-flowing, inconsolable even by their favorite candy, while I stood over them in blank male panic, pointing at them and telling my wife, with the strategic clarity of a field commander, "They're crying. What do we do?" My wife, laughing at both parties, translated, "Daddy walked 100 li today. Daddy's arms are tired, not his heart." The sirens wound down into hiccups, processed the new data, and immediately reversed polarity. Lele will massage Daddy's back. Tingting will pound Daddy's legs. It's cold, Mom and Dad. Come inside. And dragged us both in by the hands as the first snowflakes of a serious storm came down. Snow. Heavy snow. A hunter's payday weather. Which meant the last errand couldn't wait. That errand was a wooden box in the house of village chief Zhou Fulin. Bald, fierce-looking, the twins refused to escort me on grounds of Grandpa Baldy's head. The village's richest man, and, decisively, its former militia company commander. Understand the era's arithmetic. In production team days, the core militia trained with real army weapons and took them home, and their commander accumulated inventory. He answered the door braced to refuse a favor beggar, until I produced a big unity note, at which point I was inside, warmed, and being offered 3 homemade earth guns at 5 yuan each, 10 for all 3. My boy made them. Powder and scrap iron toys. Declined. Then, reading me correctly, he brought out the real box, a Type 56 semi-automatic rifle, the best hunting weapon of the decade, 10-round magazine in a world where most hunters reload single black powder shots, lying on 100 or 200 loose cartridges. The militia commander's retirement fund. The negotiation was a village classic. Him, 70. Me, holding 2 fingers. 20. Him, nearly falling off the kang. An air gun costs 20 in the county. Me, unleashing the sales pitch of a man who has watched 40 years of markets. Uncle, who else is ever going to buy it? Everyone here makes their own earth guns. In your house, it rusts. 20 yuan is a piglet. Feed it up, buy a sow, and pigs make pigs. Your rifle makes nothing but rust. I only came to you out of respect. I watched the words pigs make pigs physically enter his eyes and start compounding. 60, 25, 55, 35. Gritted teeth. 45. Gun and bullets. Take it or leave it. Done. And then I handed him exactly 20 in the season's boldest payment plan. The rest in a couple of days, Uncle. Snow falling outside, a rifle on the kang between us, and a village chief staring at 2 big unity notes in the patched sleeve of a man promising 25 more yuan from a mountain everybody knew you couldn't earn money on. He squawked, of course. 25 yuan, not 25 fen. And I closed it with collateral logic. You're holding my 20. If I welch, keep the money and take back the gun. I own land. Am I going to flee the country over a rifle, Uncle? The bald head got tapped in surrender. The box of loose cartridges got thrown in. Inconvenient to carry them loose. The box is yours, said the man now cradling 2 big unity notes. And one honest question followed me out. Where'd you get 20 yuan? I told him straight. Hunting, because this secret had a shelf life anyway. He briefly considered the mountains himself, then remembered his knees. And so, 11 days after waking up in 1983 with a bamboo kitchen knife, I walked home through the falling snow with a Type 56 semi-automatic rifle on my back and roughly 200 rounds under my arm. The mountain and I were about to renegotiate our relationship. But first, and file this under things the old me never once did, I got up before the rooster finished his shift, found the water tank empty, and hauled 3 big buckets up from our stone well myself, breaking the skin ice with the swing trick you learn or you don't. My wife had been doing that, with those wrists, every day of our marriage. Then I cooked the breakfast porridge, left it warm under the lid for 3 sleepers, loaded the magazine plus 20 pocket rounds, stole a fistful of rice from the jar, and walked into a world gone white. Goose feather snow, the pines standing at attention, with a knife, a sack, and a real gun, dressed like a scarecrow and armed like a border guard. Day 1 of the gun era was a lesson in what the gun doesn't fix. First, infrastructure. The county wire became 10 snares, slip loops staked along the fresh tracks in the game runs, baited with rice grains buried in snow. A snare works while you sleep. A rifle only works while you aim. A hunter builds both. Then the christening. A rabbit broke cover and I put my first shot through its head, aiming at its legs. We'll call it a headshot in the retelling. My trigger finger and I knew we had homework. Then the mountain dangled the real prize. A wild boar herd's tracks, 5 or 6 animals, and here's the hunter's paradox nobody tells you. A herd without a lone boar is safer than one boar, because herds are sows and piglets, while the killers travel alone. And I chased that promise for 2 hours over 3 ridges until the blizzard erased the trail like a chalkboard. And on the trudge back, the mountain sent its bill. My foot went through a snow-bridged crevice, and I dropped. Didn't fight it, covered my head, let the fall spend itself, got up soaked and shaking, and only my fortress cabin with its dry firewood stood between that wet cold and a poor man's pneumonia. 2 conclusions crystallized by the fire. The cabin had already paid for itself, and I needed a dog. A nose against ambushes, a compass against whiteouts, a partner against beasts. Except the early 80s dog culling campaigns had emptied our whole village of them. Another item for the impossible shopping list. The list had a good track record lately. The mountain apologized the same evening in its own currency. A bark that wasn't a dog, the alarm cry of a roe deer from my snare line, a young roe with its head in my wire, fighting the loop tighter. I took it the old way, grabbed the antler forks, got thrown around by an animal 1/3 my weight, clamped it between my knees, 1 clean stroke of the knife, and spent the evening turning half of it into smoked meat hanging from the cabin beams. My mountain pantry, insurance against empty days. And overnight, the snares outperformed the rifle completely. 2 wild chickens, 2 chipmunks, and a hazel grouse. The famous flying dragon, the soup bird, smaller than a chicken and dearer per pound. 10 wires had out-earned my whole first week of archery while I was asleep at home. 3 days of this rhythm, snares harvesting, rifle patrolling, pelts curing, and I walked into Zhao Jianjun's with 2 heavy sacks, 5 chickens, 2 rabbits, 2 dragons. Watching him unpack it was like watching a man fall in love. You're finally reliable. We fenced over the grouse price for 1 round. 85, or my wife gets the soup. He caved. The scale sang. 24 yuan. Total savings, 29.67. I paid Zhou Fulin his 25 the same day, mostly to end his daily casual patrols past my gate, a village chief window shopping for his own money. Debt-free. Armed. Solvent. 12 days in, and I spent like a man who knew exactly what money is for. Pork for the girls, game fills, pork delights, children's palates vote grease. A thermos, the height of domestic technology. Hot water on demand, rice, noodles, candy. And this time the candy protocol had a 3rd recipient, 2 pieces pressed into my wife's palm. And when she protested, I'm not a child, the answer I'd owed her for 2 lifetimes. No, you're my wife. I'm feeding my wife. She looked away first. Then the house filled with the smell of my chili fried pork and vermicelli pork stew. Real rice under it, broth over it, the twins puffing steam out of their cheeks, and Tingting laughing her eyes into crescents over Dad's cooking. And the last scene of our poverty played itself without our knowing. A family of 4 around a rock-steadied table, eating meat like it was normal, in the poorest house at the end of the village. Because outside our gate, nose in the air like a pointer, stood the audience. Zhou Fenghua, my aunt by marriage, wife of my uncle Ren Di Kai, former production team captain. Let me read you their family's ledger with mine. When my father died young, they helped with nothing. When their 3 sons built houses, they summoned my wife and me as free labor and paid us in exactly 0 meals. And when our grain ran out and my wife swallowed her pride to beg them for food, Zhou Fenghua threw her out the door. Since then, their favorite entertainment was retelling the village what a worthless loafer I was. Today, she'd strolled over specifically to savor my ruin, heard I'd quit the brigade, came to watch the wreckage, and instead, her nose caught pork on the wind. Watch her logic fight for its life as she followed the smell down the lane. The village chief's house? No, past it. Old man Guo's son-in-law? No, Guo's out gathering firewood, furious on an empty stomach. But past Guo's there's only... No. That family of 4 is dirt poor. His wife begged US for grain. And then, through the falling dusk, my cheerful voice over the wall. Lele, Tingting, dinner! And the richest aroma in the village pouring out of the poorest chimney in it. She stumbled. She crept to the door crack and pressed her eye to it like a burglar. She told herself she was dreaming, seeing ghosts in daylight, and kept looking anyway, because the thorn was already in. The loafer is eating meat. Aunt, you have no idea how much worse this is going to get for you. Inside, oblivious, the dinner was reaching its emotional crescendo, a trembling little spoon crossing the table bearing 1 piece of fatty pork. Tingting straining her whole body forward. Daddy, this meat is delicious. Daddy, eat! Brows furrowing when I didn't comply fast enough. Outside, my aunt watched us eat meat, like it was free, bite by bite, an experience she'd later class as worse than dying, licked her lips, and slunk home to file her report, which produced the funniest scene of the week in a kitchen I wasn't even in. Ren Dekai, my uncle, the former production team captain, gnawing his 10,000th sweet potato in a cold kitchen, flatly refusing the intelligence. Meat? You're seeing things. His girls are half-starved. His wife begged us for grain. He lost his brigade job. Where would money come from? And my aunt, for once in her life telling the truth, unable to defend it, because who'd believe it? He settled on the village's default theory of unexplained prosperity. If it's true, the meat's not from anywhere proper. Promised to buy their own meat in a couple days. Watched his wife audibly swallow at the word, and told her she embarrassed him. 2 lifetimes of relatives, and the first true thing she ever said about me got her scolded. There's justice in the machinery after all. It just runs slow. Then the mountain and I had our rematch. Days into the new rhythm, snares feeding the ledger 4 to 5 chipmunks daily, 1 trap robbed down to a pile of chicken feathers by some freeloading predator. Noted, the forest keeps books too. I crossed a ridge on the way home and saw it in the valley grass below. A wild boar, smaller than my nemesis, rump up in the snow, rolling around like it owned the place. This time, I had a rifle. This time, the ambush was mine. A wide southern circle to 50 meters, a rock for a rest, left arm as the mount, breath settled, crack. Left hind thigh, blood on snow. And here's what they don't tell you about smaller boars. This one didn't run. It turned, found me with its ferocious little eyes, and charged, 150 pounds of mud-armored spite committing to mutual destruction across open ground with no trees to climb, nothing between us but my trigger discipline. Shot 2 into the armor. Shot 3 missed as I sprinted sideways firing. Shot 4, right eye socket, bone shattered, and the beast's own blood blinded it mid-charge. It lost its footing and cartwheeled down into the valley, piling up against a half-height rock. I finished it point blank, reloaded, and, the veteran's move, shot the corpse once more on principle. Then I sat down in the snow next to 200 pounds of dead pig and laughed at the sky with my heart going like a sewing machine. First big kill of the second life. The mountain had tried this exact move on me 12 days ago, and I'd needed a tree and a miracle. Growth. The logistics wrote their own comedy. You cannot carry a boar 4 hours through snow-hole terrain, so I built transport on site. Forked branches bent into runners, vines lashed clear of the ground, an hour of freezing knife work, and I had a bushcraft sled sliding my prize up out of the valley. Then the mountain sent its tax collectors. A soft crunch behind me, and 3 pairs of brown-yellow eyes, wolves, pulled in by. the blood smell, staring at me with the frank arithmetic of a hungry winter. I scanned hard for the rest of the pack. A visible wolf is off in the front of an invisible circle. In deep winter, packs run 30 strong. Just 3. One shot in the air froze their pounce. One shot past an ear, cracking into a tree, convinced them I was a creditor not worth robbing, and they dissolved into the timber. I dragged my pork home through the dusk, resting, chewing smoked roe deer from the cabin stores like a man snacking from his own refrigerator halfway up a mountain, and made my entrance at the gate with a showman's line I'd been rehearsing for an hour. "Xueying, Lele, Tingting, look what I got!" My wife came out mid-question, saw the boar, and ran the full wife sequence in 2 seconds flat. Shock to, "Are you hurt?" Relief. Pride. "Next time you see a wild boar, run." The twins orbited the carcass at a safe half-meter, thrilled and appalled. And when Lele asked why we'd sell the boar instead of eating it, I got to deliver the era's strangest economics lesson. Wild boar is the cheap meat. Lean, gamey, needs spices only state restaurants own. The fat local pork is the luxury. We sell the wild one and buy the tame one, little one. That's called arbitrage. You'll invent it independently by age 6 at this rate. Selling a boar meant the county, and the county meant capacity, so I ran 2 errands that each turned into a sketch. First, the handcart. Zhou Fulin opened his door mid-dinner already talking. "You bought the gun, no refunds." The man had spent days bracing for buyer's remorse, and had meanwhile, on the strength of my own pigs make pigs sermon, decided to buy a sow with my money. I borrowed the cart off a chief so relieved he practically threw it at me. Second, labor. Ren Dasheng, the West End strongman the village calls second fool, not stupid, just simple, honest as bread and built like a gatepost. His father, Ren Shunfu, nearly choked on his pipe at my offer of 80 fen for a day's hauling. Not at the amount, at the credibility. "Changming, no offense, but do you have 80 fen?" Until I put 2 10-fen notes in his hand as deposit, at which point I was suddenly so sorry for the misunderstanding, and Dasheng was summoned at a volume that shook snow off the roof. And at dawn, after my wife got up early against orders to steam me 2 buns for the road, and got called "so good to me" and combusted quietly over the stove, I found Dasheng squatting outside my gate in the pre-dawn cold, because his father had sent him before light with instructions to wait and not bother the employer. The boy then pulled the loaded cart, essentially the entire 50 li, in one silent, cheerful stint, refusing relief, and entered the county gawking like a pilgrim at the 2-story buildings. "Brother Changming, it's so grand." First trip of his life. Hired muscle at 80 fen, worth 8 yuan, loyal as the dog I couldn't buy yet. We rolled our conspicuous cargo through the streets, passers-by narrating the boar to each other like a parade float, heading for the state restaurant. And then, from the shop ahead, the sound every market day keeps in its back pocket, a commotion. It was just a noodle shop doing roaring business, and my empty stomach staged a coup. 2 bowls of pork bone noodles, 16 fen each. One carried out to Dasheng, who first performed the ritual, "I'm not hungry," of a man visibly drooling, then squatted by the cart and later licked the bowl to porcelain. And while I ate mine, opportunity sat down across the table uninvited. A fat man, and in 1983, fat is a business card, who opened with, "You hunt that boar outside, young man?" This was Wang Changsheng, manager of the Guangzhou state-run restaurant, the county's flagship, the one that caters visiting leadership, and the visiting leadership, it happened, was tired of pork and hungry for game. I read his suit, read his hurry, offered him a Ying Chun from my pocket. His double-take at a patched peasant holding cadre cigarettes was its own small dividend. Let him pay for my noodles, since he insisted, and closed the deal at his own table. 7 fen a pound for boar, above the going 6.5, everything else at list. At his marbled-lioned restaurant, the scale said 183 jin, and the accountant counted out 134 yuan, which I pocketed without counting, to his open astonishment. "Manager Wang, would a man of your standing cheat a nobody like me?" Flattery, plus the simple fact that I'd watched the accountant count it twice. He laughed, called me a fine young man, and issued the golden ticket. "Bring your game here. Ask for Master Zhou." The purchasing station added 11.6 for the pelts. Running total for the day, 145.6 yuan, more than the old me had earned in some entire years. I took Dasheng back to the noodle shop and ordered like a warlord. And then, in a hutong where I'd gone to swap ration tickets, the mountain god, or somebody up there fond of hunters, put a basket in my path. A refined-looking young man leaning on a wall, freezing, next to a covered basket he was selling nothing out of because he'd covered it, until two small white heads popped out to inspect the street. Puppies. And not just puppies. I got one clear look and my pulse jumped. White dragons. The CZ hound. One of the great hunting breeds of the world. The wild boar's nemesis. A dog that will single-handedly brawl a boar. Warns of beasts before you smell them, encircles game with you like a co-conspirator, and bonds to one master for life. After the dog-culling campaigns and the fur trade years, purebreds were nearly extinct, and this shivering, educated youth, whose wife had brought the parent dogs from her hometown, was sitting on a litter of 5 and asking 3 yuan. I performed the sacred rite of skeptical haggling, never fawn at the counter, walked him to 1 yuan ahead, and then inspected the litter by the old formula, 5 reds and 1 white. Red nose for scent, red mouth for bite, sunken triangular eyes for fearlessness, tail carried high over the back. 3 of the 5 were high grade. A 4th, a stubby, big-eared goofball, had the blue-patched tongue the old-timers call a flower hut, top grade. I'd come intending to someday find 1 dog. I bought all 5, plus the basket for carriage, made the boy promise me you'll treat them well face at me, and walked off with a complete future hunting pack for 5 yuan, the single best trade of either of my lives, and I once traded 2 candies for a bayonet. The puppies rode in my arms, barked twice back at their old life, then turned and licked my fingers. Contract signed, all parties. The rest of the money did what money is for. At the supply and marketing co-op, I bought a pile that stunned the salesgirl onto her abacus and set the queue whispering, 10,000 yuan household? Dressed like that? Flowered cotton shoes for each twin, 3.50 a pair, city kid shoes. Corduroy cotton shoes for my wife. Wool-lined ex-army boots for the man whose straw-stuffed cloth shoes froze solid every time he stood still. 7.60, worth double. Nylon socks, a tin flashlight, MSG, 5-spice, sugar, salt, pots, nails, wire, and, spotted hanging behind the counter at the last second, a silk hair ornament, the kind every fashionable young wife in the county wore, and mine tied her hair with rag string instead. 67 yuan, 37 fen, half a cart. On the road home we passed Wu Jiatun mid-pig slaughter, a farmer named Zhao Baoguo knifing his own 2-year hog in fury because the food station had downgraded his grade A pig to grade B pricing right when his son's bride price came due. And I closed the day's last arbitrage. Everyone in 3 villages was buying half-gin scraps of fat for oil, leaving the ribs and lean meat unsellable. So I took 6 gin of the worthless cuts at a point discount and got the pig liver, blood builder, exactly what my depleted wife and daughters needed, thrown in free, to a chorus of village commentary about the unfamiliar young idiot who buys meat with no fat in it. 4 yuan 20. Both sides walked away certain they'd fleece the other. That's a perfect market. At the village gate, I paid Dasheng his 60 fen balance and sent him home to dinner. He genuinely tried to refuse, on the grounds that he'd eaten my noodles and therefore owed me the last 100 meters of hauling. I had to invoke his supper to dislodge him, and pulled the last stretch myself. 1 cart bearing new shoes for 4 people, a flashlight, a spice rack, 6 gin of pork, a silk ribbon, and 5 sleeping white dragons. 2 weeks ago, I'd walked out of this gate with a bamboo bow and 3 fen to my name. The toll booth was waiting at the village entrance. Aunt Zhou Fenghua, feeding chickens with her gate strategically open, spotted the red of the ribs from 50 meters, and her whole worldview reorganized around it in real time. Meat to surely stolen, to I'm his aunt, to everyone who sees meat gets a share. Chengming, your uncle's been unwell lately. Needs meat to recover. Note the technology, not a request, a medical requisition, from the woman who threw my starving wife out her door. I gave her the era's most elegant counter. Then you should buy him some, auntie. In fact, support my business. 80 fen a pound, family discount. She nearly hemorrhaged. Escalation 2. Come to dinner tomorrow. Your uncle wants to talk. Bring a pound as a gift. We're family. Declined. No availability. Escalation 3. Mask off. Don't think I don't know where that meat came from. You don't want me telling people, do you? And there it was, extortion, at the gate, from kin. Tell whoever you like, I said. It's your mouth, and pulled my cart through her speechlessness. Some relatives you win over. Some you simply out-earn until their spite has nowhere to stand. Home rinsed all of it off in one scene. Tingting's little head at the door crack, the radar cry, "Sister, it's Daddy!" And then, upgrade of the week. Instead of launching at my exhausted arms, the twins sprinted past me to the back of the cart and started pushing. Total combined output, 0 newtons. Total effect on the man pulling, immeasurable. I slow-walked the cart in so they could believe they'd done it. Then the basket moved under its old coat. 1 white head periscoped out, then 3, and my daughters achieved a liftoff. "Puppy! Daddy, puppy!" 5 white dragon cubs met their 2 small masters, and smart as their bloodline, instantly licked the correct hands. And when I unwrapped the flowered cotton shoes, eyes closed first, both girls peeking through their fingers within 4 seconds. The twins did the thing that cracks me open every time. Gasped at the prettiest shoes they'd ever seen, and refused to put them on, because Lele hasn't washed her feet, they're dirty. Children so trained by scarcity that they protect new shoes from themselves. We'll fix that. Repetition fixes everything. Ask my rifle. My wife came home to a yard full of dogs and daughters shouting bulletins, and I ambushed her with the rest. Corduroy cotton shoes met with the standard protest. "Mine are fine, save it for the children." Overruled on the standard grounds. "You're my wife." And then I sat her down in the main hall and pulled her shoes off myself to fit the new ones, which, in 1983, was roughly equivalent to a public declaration of love, and turned her scarlet. Her heels were swollen with chilblains she'd never once mentioned. It's like this every winter. I'm used to it. The 6 most quietly devastating words in this house. Frostbite cream went on the county list. Then the silk hair ornament, at which I attempted, with the confidence of a man who'd watched women do it for 60 years, to put up her hair myself, and delivered a masterclass in humiliation. A loose, collapsing knot in several yanked hairs before she took pity. Maybe I'll do it myself? And with 2 twists of her wrists, turned herself into someone from a poster. Black hair up, that neck, that downward smile. Well, you're not saying anything. I wasn't saying anything because 2 lifetimes of vocabulary had stepped out. "It's beautiful," I managed. "It really is." And then, because a man reborn has learned exactly which moments don't come back, I kissed my wife, gently, in our own main hall. And she went wide-eyed and statue still like the girl from 1979, managed outside the children, and was saved by the timeless klaxon from the yard. "Mommy, Tingting is hungry!" She fled to the kitchen, glowing like a stove lid. The wall between us wasn't losing bricks anymore. It was losing structural integrity. Dinner was my counter-argument to the village's entire theory of pig liver. My wife had inspected my purchases and flagged the liver as inedible waste, fishy, strange, return it, with 2 small jurors nodding gravely behind her. So I cooked the future at them. Liver marinated in sweet potato starch and sugar, never salt, salt toughens it. Dropped into boiling broth, thickened, hit with MSG and 5-spice from the county hall, finished with a spoonful of lard, and produced a pork liver soup with no fishiness at all. Silky, faintly sweet, the kind where a bite of liver and a sip of broth chase each other around the table. The village had spent decades hating an ingredient because nobody here had ever owned 5-spice powder. Verdict from the jury? 3 empty bowls and a mother quietly re-examining everything she thought she knew about her husband. The household absorbed its new citizens overnight. The pack got named by committee. Committee aged 3.5, vocabulary limited. So Daddy drafted, and the twins ratified. The fat, flower-tongued goofball became Xiao Bao, and the rest followed down the numbers. Dog food doctrine established. Chipmunk meat as the staple, boiled soft with rice and cabbage. White dragons eat anything, get sick? Never, and grow into weapons if you feed the growth. And the ledger got its first strategy meeting. 145.6 earned, 67.83 left after the spree. Earmarked not for hoarding, but for the next tool, a donkey and cart. Because 2 50-li round trips on foot had taught my skeleton what my brain already knew. And because a cart means my wife and daughters see the county with their own eyes someday soon. Tools first. Comfort follows tools. Then the mountain handed me the episode that changed my standing in it. Deep sighed, next morning, gunshots, one, then two, then a pause with the rhythm of a man reloading a single-shot rifle, then silence, then a sound that dropped the temperature of my blood, the low, wet growl of a wild leopard. Understand the animal, a night ambush specialist that leaps 6-meter ravines, strangles prey with a bite, and is almost never seen by daylight. Hunters don't hunt leopards, they survive them. I closed in anyway. Leopard pelt outprices boar, and it was daytime, my one advantage, and nearly died learning why the old-timers call the thing at your back Old 6. A rustle overhead, one chill down my neck, and there it was on a thick branch directly above my planned path, motionless, patient, already waiting. If I'd walked 30 more meters, I wouldn't have been the hunter, I'd have been the delivery. And before I could work an angle through the trees, the battle found me instead. A huge, big yellow dog burst from the woods, and the leopard dropped on it like weather, followed by 2 more dogs, another yellow, and a purebred Lan Xueying wolfhound, and the clearing became a blur of blood and screaming fur that no rifleman could pick a shot out of. The leopard fought 3 dogs and won, killed the first yellow, tore the Lan Xueying open, and only when it reared to lunge did I get my window. One shot grazed its rump, and it was gone through the trees faster than my next 2 bullets, both of which hit timber. What it left behind? 1 dead dog, 1 dying, and 1 3-legged survivor soaked in blood, who looked at me, barked twice, and limped off, checking over its shoulder that I was following. It led me to its master, an old hunter, unconscious in the snow, chest raked open by claws that would have unspooled him entirely without his thick coat, still breathing, still bleeding out. And here is where I'll be honest about my own arithmetic, because a man reborn doesn't get to pretend he's a saint. I saved him for 3 reasons at once. Because he'd die otherwise. Because a stranger who lets a Kaoshan hunter die in the snow can never work these mountains again. And because the hunters of Liugouzi Village know every fold of this range and sit on pelts I could trade. Kindness, reputation, and business, all one motion. So, first aid from the forest itself, horse puff mushrooms off a rotting log, the old styptic, powder packed into the wounds, cloth strips torn and bound, then 100+ pounds of unconscious hunter over my shoulders for 3 kilometers of mountain path behind a limping dog, my consciousness going gray at the edges by the gate, where I gasped, "Grandpa, help!" at an old man chopping wood, who turned out, by the dog's own navigation, to be exactly the right door. Mr. Wang, the barefoot doctor of Liugouzi Village. I got to watch the era's medicine at its improbable best. Alcohol swabs, reusable steel needles, and acupuncture anesthesia. Silver needles placed to numb the wound before suturing. 1 needle and a handful of herbs. The whole poor man's hospital that kept these mountains alive. And the verdict? You stopped the bleeding in time. Without you, third brother Wang is dead. The patient would wake by nightfall. The dog got herbs too, at my asking. Down 2 of the 3 dogs he'd fed better than himself. The old hunter would need the survivor. And when the doctor's wife sprinted off to fetch the family, and the old couple tried to feed me, I gave my name and village and left, which, I later heard, converted me in 1 afternoon of Kaoshan gossip into that kind and righteous young man who wouldn't even stay for a bowl of rice. Reputation? Seeded. In a village of hunters, where I planned to do business for years. Some investments you make with money. The walk home paid a dividend too. A run of snow-free ground behind boulders hiding a natural winter garden, wild celery, aurelia shoots, wild garlic, half a sack of green vegetables in a season when green was a rumor, plus an afternoon upgrading the cabin into a homestead. Stone and clay stove built, 2 small pots seated, first hot water boiled on the mountain. I'd been drinking meltwater cold enough to ache. Hand-carved bowls and cedar pot lids, a steamer and kitchen shed on the drafting table. My mountain base now had heat, water, stores, and cookware. 3 chipmunks off the snares for the road, and home before dark to find a vulture in my yard. Uncle Rendekai himself, dispatched by his wife's fury and his own curiosity, standing over my family and enjoying himself. My wife stone-faced in the courtyard, my twins hiding behind her legs, and 5 puppies, teeth barely in, arrayed in front of the girls howling defiance at a grown man. Xiao Bao actually lunging before Lele hauled him back into her arms. and the speech in progress, the one he'd crossed the village to deliver because being ex-captain doesn't get him lectures anymore, and he missed them. Where'd the money for dogs come from? What did that brat say to his aunt yesterday? You're his wife, control him. Hunting alone in the mountains? Who does he think he is? And look at these two girls. What have you raised them into? No sense of responsibility as parents. He was insulting my daughters, in my yard, to my wife's face. And then he heard the gate. He turned into my stare and the rifle on my shoulder and watched 40 years of pecking order wobble. Then he remembered he was an elder, reinflated, and demanded an accounting of my hunting. I let him open my sack himself. Wild vegetables. Relief flooded him. The sermon resumed at full pressure. Picking weeds, you disgrace the Wren family name. Right up until he wandered into my kitchen mid-lecture and hit the evidence locker. Cured lean meat and a glistening rack of ribs hanging over the stove, a jar of fresh lard, a thermos, new porcelain, a co-op's worth of goods. I watched the man's entire cosmology fail in real time and reorganize itself around the only explanation his soul could accept: theft. And then he did the most Ren Dekai thing possible, pivoted instantly from moralist to accomplice in fear. You'll be shot for this. You'll drag the whole family down, return it all, apologize, and your uncle will say no more. Magnanimous. From the man who worked my pregnant wife for free and paid in 0 meals. I wanted to beat him into the snow. Instead, I did worse. I ran the calculation. His clan is big. Mine is a wife and 2 toddlers. Fists are a luxury I can't bill to them. And reached for the weapon that actually fits his hide. Greed. Illegal? Uncle, please. I borrowed money for cloth and cotton. Xueying sewed cotton shoes, and I sold them in the county. You have no idea how those fly in this city. Several yuan a pair. Delivered with the aggrieved dignity of an honest laborer, garnished with a line about the road to prosperity through hard work and contributing to the building of socialism that hit his party meeting reflexes like a gong. I could see the machinery turn behind his eyes. Doubt to grudging retreat to jealousy to, and then, gloriously, the hook setting. My wife can sew shoes too. He left at speed, believing me this time, already drafting his own footwear empire. My wife saw through the whole play in about 4 seconds. Your aunt will be sewing shoes for the county by the weekend, and when they don't sell, he'll come back furious. And I shrugged. He'll have no one to complain to. I didn't make him greedy. I just left the cheese where he was already sniffing. And to her deeper worry, he'll badmouth you to the whole village. Don't you care? The honest answer, of course I care. I care about you and the girls more. Let him talk. We'll live well. Nobody argues with a full chimney. She smiled, finally. The twins emerged from hiding to report with tremendous solemnity that bad Grandpa is gone, and the family ate my 4-dish apology to the evening: wild vegetable rib stew, celery fried pork, Aurelia shoots, the vermicelli classic, while 5 puppies inhaled liver soup rice below decks. My wife looked at a table she couldn't have imagined a month ago, got handed a piece of meat, said, "Thank you," and got corrected. "You want to thank me? Eat more." The blush was answer enough. The infrastructure sprint continued up the mountain, a hand-carved cedar steamer, hollowed, fire-cured, salt-boiled to purge the resin smell, banded with grapevine, plus a kitchen shed, so the cabin now steamed rice and boiled tea like a licensed inn. And gratitude found my house before I could go collect it. Third Brother Wang's whole family had come while I was out and left 3 wild rabbits and 2 wild chickens on my table. A hunter's family with a man laid open on the kang, tithing their savior from what the sun had caught. So next morning, I flipped their gift at Zhao Jianjun's, 18.3 yuan, even gratitude compounds in this economy. Bought a pound of pork and made the return visit to Kaoshan Village, pausing on the road for one piece of pure opportunism with a conscience. An old woman hurrying to market with 2 laying hens and a husband who needed medicine today. I bought both hens on the spot at her price, waved off the 10 fen she tried to return. "They're full of eggs, Auntie. We're square," and walked. Away with the daily egg problem solved, while she hurried home crying with medicine money. Some trades, everybody wins. Those are the best ones. The second best are the ones with Zhao Jianjun. Kaoshan received me like visiting cavalry. The barefoot doctor's wife personally walked me to Third Brother Wang's yard. Wooden houses, rabbit skins curing on a yew tree, and the three-legged big yellow rising off its sack to wag at me because a good dog files its debts. Then the family. The son, Wang Qiang, Qiangzi, 2 years my junior and older looking, eyes going wide at, "This is the man who saved your father." The mother, Lin Lihua, cried out and dropping to her knees before I caught her. And the old hunter himself, gray on the bed, trying to sit up through stitched claw furrows like fat centipedes across his chest. I did the visit properly, pushed him flat, checked the wounds. The barefoot doctor's herbs were honestly impressive. Forced my pound of pork past the family's fierce refusals with the nuclear option, keep refusing and I'll never dare visit again, and sat with the old man while his wife fled to the kitchen to hide her face. His first question wasn't about his chest. "My 2 dogs, are they dead?" I told him the truth and watched a man who just survived a leopard take the real wound, because in these mountains, a hunter's dogs are the other half of his life, fed before he feeds himself, and he'd raised those 2 for years. The room went quiet, the way rooms do around old men grieving something they can't say out loud. Then he told me how it happened, and it was a textbook page written in his own blood. He'd wounded a roe deer, the dogs chased, he followed, and walked into a leopard staked out in daylight, near the village, where leopards never are. He spotted it at 10 meters. An old hunter's neck hair radar, same as mine, got 2 panicked shots off from a single loader, threw the gun itself at the leaping cat, and was down under its claws when his dogs arrived. "I laughed at old Wang Demin for getting killed by a little boar after a lifetime of big ones," he said, "and nearly got eaten by a leopard at my own village gate. I'm getting old." And then this man, whom I'd known for 1 day, paid me in the only currencies that matter up here. Information, where the tigers walk, which folds of Lan Chang hold what, poured out without hoarding, and an invitation. Wild Boar Ridge, a place deep enough that 2-day travel keeps even lifelong hunters away, so thick with boar that Kaoshan organizes a village expedition every few months. Many guns, shared danger, meat divided even. We go in about half a month. Come with us. You and Chong look out for each other. A seat on the mountain's biggest hunt, offered over wild vegetable dumplings that his wife served me in a visibly bigger bowl than her own husband's, from a family that had already eaten, in the way poor families have always already eaten when there's a guest. I ate, praised honestly, asked about pelts, just missed the traveling buyer, noted there's a circuit to intercept, and walked home with more capital than I'd carried in. A hunting brotherhood, a map in my head, and a date with a ridge full of pork. Home kept compounding in small denominations. The hens moved into a mud-patched coop, and one laid an egg the same afternoon, witnessed by 2 shrieking children for whom the arrival of an egg from a live chicken ranked somewhere above the moon landing they'd never hear of. Zhou Fulin came to repossess his handcart and left having sold it to me for 2.5 yuan, eyes bugging at the brick of small bills I counted it from. The village chief's respect, I find, tracks my cash balance with scientific precision. My wife and I made steamed buns together at one board, me kneading, her wrapping, a rhythm neither of us had ever practiced and both of us somehow knew. And when the steamer opened, the twins ate their first buns in their lives, kneeling at the little table, cheeks bulging, Lele awarding me a thumbs up, and Tingting declaring the day's headline. "Daddy, Tingting likes Daddy." And in the very last round, my wife noticed the cook hadn't eaten one single bun all evening, hijacked the final one from under my chopsticks, and fed it to me, muffled voice, eyes elsewhere. "You've been busy all day." It was objectively worse than the county buns. It was the best bun of 2 lifetimes. The chef confirms both facts. Even the night shift produced dividends. Barking at midnight, my hand went to the rifle, my head to the meat on the rafters. But the crisis was already resolved by the time my flashlight found it. 2 weasels had tunneled the still wet mud patch of the chicken coop, and 5 puppies had met them at the breach and killed them both. Months old, teeth barely in, first blood already on the books, and the whole squad crowding around my legs filing for their commendations. Granted, with head pats and a policy change. The pack starts field training now. And so began the montage that turned 5 yuan of puppies into a company of soldiers. 3 dogs per shift up the mountain, rotating, learning my whistle, flushing rabbits, and revolutionizing the chipmunk trade. Because a white dragon's nose finds the burrow every time the burrow exists. And Xiao Bao, the flower-tongued goofball, turned out to own the best nose of the litter, smelling game at distances that made my tracking skills feel decorative. 4 days, 50-plus pelts, 10 kilos of looted nuts, a steady chicken and rabbit pipeline through a Zhao Jianjun who now greeted me like a bank manager, net worth past 100 yuan. A month ago, this household's total assets were a moldy jar of sweet potato strips. One account, though, stayed open and prowling, the wounded leopard. It hadn't fled to the deep mountains. It had started raiding Kaoshan's chicken coops at night, cunning, nocturnal, uncatchable, while the village set snares and ran day sweeps that found nothing. I'd hunted it twice with Wang Chong myself and come home empty. And then, on my first sleep-in of the new life, a slow morning, an afternoon of pulling my squealing daughters around the yard in my new cart, Changzi's voice arrived ahead of his boots. "Brother Ren, I think I know where the leopard is. Let's go kill it." His reasoning, delivered with the flat certainty of a man avenging his father. The leopard entered the village from the direction of the back mountain. The front mountain sweeps found nothing. Leopards den up by day in trees or caves. And behind the village were 3 or 4 caves he'd played in as a boy. He hadn't seen anything. He'd deduced it, a hunter's son, thinking like a detective. It was good enough for me. I kitted up, rifle, spare rounds loose in the coat pocket, knife, leg wraps, tin flashlight for cave work, and made one last personnel decision that made Changzi squint. Cut a head hole in a burlap sack, loaded Xiao Bao into it, and tied the sack to my belt, one small white head periscoping out over my hip. "Why are you bringing a puppy to a leopard hunt?" "Because this puppy's nose is the best instrument either of us owns, brother. The teeth are my department." We armed up at Third Brother Wang's, where the crippled Big Yellow now ran gate duty over 4 new local pups Changzi had collected, because a hunter's yard abhors a dog-shaped vacuum, and headed for the back mountain and the caves. The back mountain explained its own alibi at first sight. A 5-meter cliff over the village stream, bare rock and scrub you could see all of at a glance, exactly the kind of place search parties skip. But leopard prints in the snow at the cave mouths said Changzi's boyhood deduction had hit dead center. 2 shallow caves cleared by flashlight. The third, narrow, black, no rear exit, we ringed with traps and roped off rather than crawl into. A hunter who squeezes into a stone pipe after a leopard is filing his own paperwork. And at the fourth, the big one, my secret weapon, earned his lifetime contract. Xiao Bao, who until now had only ever whimpered politely at game, started barking without cease from his sack, the canine word for danger, here, now. We stacked on the entrance, guns up, nothing charged, so I borrowed a page from my Father of the Mountains book, lit one of Changzi's resin torches, and hurled it into the dark, and the cave growled back. Home, awake, not coming out. Which left the option you don't tell your wife about. Go in. Torch for Changzi, tin flashlight for me. His eyes went green with envy even mid-leopard hunt. Water dripping, tomb quiet. The thrown torch burning ahead of us in the last passage. And then, Xiao Bao's fur went up off his body like a bottle brush, and he screamed the warning, and out of the black, exactly along my flashlight beam, 100+ pounds of leopard came off the ground at me at cave speed. The warning bought me the half-second. I rolled instead of gambling on a snapshot. The cat overflew me, and Changzi, God bless the vengeance in him, put his old single-loader round straight into its rump as it landed. It screamed, spun to open him up, and gave me the one geometry a mediocre marksman dreams about. Close, still, side on, nothing between us. 2 rounds, both through the skull. The leopard that had beaten 3 dogs and an old master hunter went soft on the cave floor, and Changzi kicked the corpse twice on behalf of 2 dead dogs and sat down hard. Damn thing's worse to kill than a bear. He's right, for the record. A bear outweighs and outhits a leopard, but bears take daylight appointments. Leopards take you, at night, from behind. Which is why the mountains bury more hunters under spotted fur than brown. And the day's decoration went to the smallest soldier, a months-old puppy in a burlap sack, whose nose and nerve had saved my skin twice in one cave. Meat rations doubled, Xiao Bao. Speak to payroll. The division of spoils became a politeness duel. Jiangzi tried to gift me the whole animal. You saved my father. How can I split accounts with you? And I cut it the way that keeps a friendship and a supply line healthy. Skin to me, the money part, export grade, county priced. Meat to his family. No small thing either. Leopard meat sells to medicine buyers as a tonic for blood and sinew. We carried it into the village on a pole at exactly the hour the empty-handed search parties were trudging home, and my Kaoshan stock went vertical. The crowd, the elder Uncle Ren introducing himself, and, audible over the general commentary, one auntie's verdict. A pity he's married, or my daughter. Lin Li Hua scolded her son for endangering the family's benefactor, tried to refuse the split, got threatened with my never visiting again. That lever works every time on people this decent. Fed me lunch, and loaded a leopard leg on me at the gate over my objections. And the lunch itself furnished the day's comedy footnote, discreetly summarized. Leopard meat is a medicinal meat. The old-timers ration it carefully, and its most famous property, let's call it invigorating, kicked in on the walk home and turned me into a man suddenly very appreciative of his own wife, who was hugged, complimented out of nowhere, and kissed mid-water pouring before the effects mercifully faded and the toddler's nap schedule reasserted constitutional order. I handed her the leopard leg with strict instructions. Cure it, dry it, and do not cook it for the family. Some traditional medicines should stay theoretical in a one-bedroom house, and that same night, across the village, my little shoe factory lie paid its dividend with interest. Ren Dekai had gone to the county at dawn, riding a borrowed donkey cart, carrying 5 pairs of cotton shoes his wife had sewn her fingers raw producing, dreaming of Ren Chanming grade profits. The county's reception. 2 hours of standing at the farmer's market too proud to hawk. A former production team captain shouting wares unthinkable. Then 4 more hours of shouting himself hoarse once pride lost to panic. 0 customers, 0 inquiries, city passers-by staring at him like a fool. Then his ride home evaporated. The cart owner stayed over with his county daughter, and the great man walked the entire 50 li back in the dark, penniless. He left his money at home, expecting to return rich, too ashamed even to visit his own apprentice son, arriving at midnight, frozen purple and incandescent, where his wife greeted him with, "You didn't even bring meat?" And the evening self-destructed on schedule. He blamed her stitching, she counterattacked with fresh village intelligence. "You've been played. There were never any shoes. He got rich hunting a wild boar, everyone knows." He raised a hand. She screamed, "Your father's hitting me!" toward their son's room before the hand even moved, and the house of Dekai closed out its trading day at a total loss. 5 unsold pairs of shoes, 1 50 li walk, 1 marital brawl, and the slow dawning realization that the worthless nephew had aimed their own greed at them like a slingshot. I slept wonderfully that night, thanks for asking. And at dawn, my wife, who'd packed the pelts, the rabbit skins, and 1 folded leopard skin into the sack before I woke, breakfast made, thermos filled, saw me off at the kitchen door with the day's agenda, and then hesitated at the edge of saying something more. I already knew what. I'd seen the cloth and cotton coupons hoarded at her bedside, a mother's quiet arithmetic, saved through the hungry months against the day the twins' outgrown, overpatched jackets could finally be replaced, never once mentioned because the money was mine. So I said it for her. "I'll buy cloth today, cotton, needles, thread." She stared at me like I'd read her diary. That's the marriage we're building, 1 intercepted wish at a time. What I didn't announce, I'd be buying fabric for 3, because her own coat had faded through 4 winters, and her list never includes herself. Some purchases you clear with the committee afterward. The county run turned the leopard into a small fortune with a comedy of connections attached. First, ammunition resupply at Wang Wei's alley coat, 3 packs of peony now, a wholesale customer. Then the purchasing station, where Master Wang tried to bump me past the queue of sheepskin sellers, led my nephew through, and I declined the favor loudly enough for the queue to uncurse me. Never buy resentment you don't need. Then opened the sack for him privately. His eyes did the arithmetic before his mouth did. "You hit one of those?" A leopard skin outranked his signature. Upstairs we went to purchasing station manager Gao, thin, bespectacled, tea-drinking, where Master Wang introduced me as his nephew. The man converts cigarettes into kinship at a fixed exchange rate, and I laid 2 packs of peony on the desk and the skin beside them. Gao quoted 180 yuan, 20 above what a better skin had fetched months back, and my scam detector lit up. Nobody in a state chair overpays out of kindness. The answer arrived once he'd shooed Master Wong out, delivered with a cough and studied dignity. He wanted to buy the meat. 3 yuan a jean. For a friend who's unwell. I kept my face professionally straight, having field-tested that particular medicine myself 24 hours earlier. I understood the friend's condition perfectly, promised him a few jean on my next trip, and got his parting shopping request on the way out. Anything fortifying I might ever hunt, bring it straight to him, top price. Somewhere in this county, there's a very well-supplied friend. Pelts plus skin, 233 yuan. My total worth had just crossed 300, a decade of ditch wages, 5 weeks after I woke up owning a moldy grain jar. Outside the station, the county's underworld made its sales call. A burly loiterer who'd clocked my repeat visits pitched me guns from a squat against the wall. With a gun, boar, bear gall, tiger bone, mink, big money. And I milked him dry as a free market survey. Type 56, 240 yuan here, 300-400 elsewhere. So Zhou Fulin, who'd sold me his for 45, must never, ever learn this. The man would need the barefoot doctor. Old muskets, Hanyang's, Type 38s, pass. And then the item that made my pulse tick. A flower-mouth Liugouzi, the knurled muzzle foreign semi-auto pistol, compact, low recoil, a self-defense piece a mountain man could carry into a cave. Off a veteran, 200+ yuan. I pled poverty and filed the address. A pistol is next quarter's problem. This quarter buys a donkey. But the mountain keeps whispering about tigers, and a man who plans to still be alive at the third act shops early for the props. The supply and marketing co-op got the tender part of the budget, 15 feet of top-grade pure cotton, bright yellow with tiny daisies for the twins, a quieter print for their mother, plus needles, thread, cotton batting, and new scissors to replace the worn-out pair she'd never complain about. Home by dark to the standing reception committee. 5 dogs, then 2 daughters, then 1 wife confiscating my cold water ladle mid-gulp. There's boiled water. It's not safe. I am husbanded now, and I recommend it. And the fabric reveal detonated on schedule. The girls shrieking over the prettiest flowers they'd ever seen. My wife's fingers finding the weave instantly. This is pure cotton, 3-4 mao a foot. Pained and delighted in the same breath, then flat out short-circuiting at her own bundle. I have clothes. You're my wife. Fine, you're right. Whatever you say. Her one counterattack. And why nothing for yourself? I'll sew you a set too. Checkmate accepted. And when I told her, over dinner, what the leopard skin had actually fetched, we both went quiet on instinct at the sound of knuckles on the courtyard gate. Because in a village, the number you just said is the most dangerous thing in the house. Who is it? It's me, your uncle. At an hour when half the village was already asleep. Rendekai, back from the wreckage of his footwear empire, and I opened that gate wearing my most hospitable smile, genuinely curious which script he'd brought, the grievance or the new angle. The smell of my stir-fry hit him in the face as the bolt slid back, and I watched his plan visibly reorganize around his salivary glands. I'm the elder. It's dinner time. Surely he'll have to invite me in. I'll refuse twice, then mention I haven't eaten. He stood there, marinating in the aroma, waiting for the invitation his whole choreography depended on. I said nothing at all. The silence stretched until he had to play his card face up, in the doorway, like a beggar with seniority. Are you eating? We are. Got home late. You'll have eaten at 4 or 5, Uncle. You must be full, so I won't trouble you to join us. I delivered it with a nephew's warmest smile and watched a man who dined on oilless cabbage absorb the sentence like a slap. But the freeload was only his appetizer. First came the probe about the shoes, and I stood by my product with the serenity of a professional. Shoes sell fine, Uncle. It snowed that week, though. Bad timing. Wait, you didn't go sell shoes, did you? He hadn't the face to answer. And yes, Auntie's right, I did get lucky with 1 wild boar. Is there some conflict between the two? Then the extraction attempt. How much did the boar fetch? Parried into fog. And finally, the actual mission, the thing he'd waited for nightfall to deliver so no neighbor would witness it, unveiled in the tone of a benefactor. You have no elders to guide you. You'll waste it all. Give the money to your uncle. I'll manage it for you. Whatever you need to buy, you'll ask me. Start with 20 yuan and the leftover boar meat. I'll keep it safe. I'm doing this for your own good. 60 years of the future contain many scams. I have personally survived pyramid schemes, fake monks, and 3 separate Qigong masters. I have never heard the play run this nakedly. I let my face go from stunned to cold to that particular half-smile and watched an elder flinch off it like a dog off a stove. Go home, uncle. Wash up. Sleep. In your dreams, you can have anything. Awake, you don't get 2 fen from me. He escalated to the nuclear threat of the age. Believe it or not, I'll sever ties. Then you won't have a single relative in this village looking out for you. And I laughed with genuine delight. Really? Is that a promise? No backing out now. He left, half tripping over his own fury, gifted a parting "get lost" at his back, and my daughters emerged from behind their mother's sleeves to watch Bad Grandpa's retreat. I picked them up, one on each arm, kissed both heads, and went back to dinner. That night I counted the treasury under the kerosene lamp. 345.78 yuan. Enough. Time to buy the donkey. The donkey came with a free comedy. Township market day. Livestock row. Cattle, untouchable. A cow is a village's crown jewel. Mules, overpriced. And one prime, loud, well-fed donkey held by a mud-caked farm boy, Qian family's eldest, whose opening position was that he didn't want money. He wanted to trade the donkey for a cow. The entire livestock section piled in to perform economics at him, the insulted cattle seller. Only a fool trades a donkey for my ox. The neighbors. Sell the donkey, buy the calf, keep the change, genius. Until the poor man's worldview audibly clicked into place. He went off to survey prices like a scholar and came back glowing. 230, that's what donkeys cost. Deal. Under my own estimate, no haggling needed against a man whose entire strategy was one honest number. He counted my big Unity notes 4 times with shaking hands, threw in the straw mat and half a sack of feed, and departed at speed toward the calves. The donkey itself then held a brief referendum on my ownership, refused to walk until bribed with hay, refused to be ridden until introduced to a roadside stick, twice, plus more hay, after which we reached a durable constitutional settlement. I steer, he votes with his ears, hay is legal tender. I rode home through the market like landed gentry, 2 fen of fresh vegetables in the saddlebag. In the market had one more transaction waiting, the kind you don't find, it finds you. Zhao Jianjun flagged me down, delivering at last on the hunting dog request. Candidate 1, a big black brute that bit everything including its owner's guests, pass. Candidate 2, an old dog. 7, 8 years by the whitening muzzle, sitting at the feet of an old vegetable seller, Old Man Wang, who said the word "sell" with his head turned away so he wouldn't have to watch himself say it. The dog knew. It had refused to walk through the market gate that morning. It knew, and now it crawled at the old man's feet, wagging, groveling, pleading its case in the only language it had. The sales pitch was a eulogy. Smartest dog he'd ever raised. Point your hand and it understands. Runs down rabbits like judgment. 15 yuan. I wouldn't sell if my daughter-in-law hadn't just given birth and we weren't starving. I did the merchant's due diligence out loud. Old, pale-nosed, hunched. A lie. That hunch was fear, and I knew it when I said it. And closed at 10 yuan, which for a dog nobody else would buy except his meat, was both a steal and a rescue, depending which of us you asked. The old man took the note, raised his hand to pat the dog's head one last time, and pulled it back. Money paid, dog's not yours to touch. The old rule. Touching it is no big deal, I said, and let him say goodbye. It ate scraps its whole life and slept in a drafty shed, and it still followed me everywhere, the old man said, mostly to himself, and shuffled off around the corner with his vegetable pole. The dog lunged after him to the end of the leash, then did the thing that told me everything Old Man Wang's sales pitch hadn't. It didn't bark, didn't fight the rope, didn't bite the stranger holding it. It sat down in the snow and watched its master out of sight, all the way, and then turned around, looked me over once, and lay down at my feet. A dog that understands what has happened to it and accepts the terms and doesn't blame the buyer. I offered my hand. It sniffed, allowed the pat, and rested its chin on its paws with its grief showing. Triangular eyes, brown pupils, dark coat over visible ribs. I named him Mau Mau, Old Black, on the ride home, and he answered to it by evening, because of course he did. The homecoming parade, man on donkey, old dog trotting alongside, broke the village's composure entirely. Witnesses struck speechless, Rendekai frozen mid-pipe at his gate as I clopped past, a sight I savored at 2 miles an hour. And at my own door, the twins taking one look at the donkey and executing a full tactical retreat into the house. "Mommy, Daddy brought a little donkey!" Followed within the hour by the full arc of childhood courage. Terror to negotiated donkey ride, both girls aboard, dad spotting, stick on standby, donkey suspiciously gentlemanly. To sore bottoms too, and finally the two of them hand-feeding hay to a braying beast 10 times their size, giggling at every Mau Mau got a hero's dinner of smoked rabbit and immediately began orbiting the twins like a hired nanny. Old dogs love children, and this one had apparently been waiting years for some to guard. And when I took him along to fell trees for the donkey shed and let him off the leash at the mountain's foot, he vanished into the brush and came back in minutes with a wild rabbit, laid it at my feet, and sat looking at me. "First day's wages, boss. 10 yuan. The best 10 yuan I will ever spend, and I say that as a man who once bought 5 white dragons for 5. Even the housing crisis resolved comically. The shed being half built by dark, the donkey spent the night in our main hall on borrowed straw. Zhou Fulin traded rice straw for future donkey dung, because in 1983, even manure has a market. Alongside 6 dogs in their corner, a 1-room mud house now sleeping 4 humans, 6 dogs, 1 donkey, and 2 hens, like an ark that had run out of budget. And into this menagerie came Wang Chang, breathless, with the intel that set up the next act, Old Eagle Cliff. 2 village boys, Huzi and Tiezi, had found a deer herd out west, shot one, and celebrated loudly enough to wake a bear den. They'd escaped minus 1 dog and all of their nerve. The deer and the bear were still there. Changzi, whose courage had been compounding since the leopard cave, wanted to go, with me. And I wanted it worse than he did, because I'd been raised on the old ledger of what a bear's worth, the meat and paws, the fat that outclasses any cooking oil, the false tiger bone kneecaps, and above all the bile, sorted oil, grass, iron, gold, priced accordingly, with golden bear bile trading gram for gram against actual gold, first among the 4 treasure medicines of the mountains. 1 good gallbladder is a house. I said yes before he finished asking, ordered a donkey saddle from his carpenter third uncle as long as he was here, 3 yuan pressed on him over the standard rattledrum refusal, and set the rendezvous. Village entrance, first light, which meant a 3 a.m. start, porridge in the black cold, 6 eggs boiled for trail rations, a steamed chipmunk for me and Mau Mau to split, and a bowl of meat and leftovers for the pack, during which I noticed again that Mau Mau's ribs still show through his coat like a washboard, a debt his previous poverty left me to pay off in chipmunks. Kit, rifle, pocket of loose rounds, knife, leg wraps, rope for big prey, flashlight. Personnel. Zhao Bao's entire puppy platoon reported for duty at the site of the gear and got benched, guard the house, with military dog obedience I remained smug about. Mau Mau drew the assignment. Then a man and a dog walked an hour and a half of pitch-black mountain path, green eyes tracking us from a hillside at one point, scattered by flashlight. I don't believe in ghosts, having slept in a cemetery in my first life, but I believe comprehensively in leopards, to find Wang Chang waiting at the Kaoshan gate with his uncles Big Yellow and Wolf Blue. 3 dogs exchanged credentials the way dogs do. 2 men turned west, and we spent a morning of ridge after ridge burning toward the cliff, ignoring Mau Mau's every small alert. No rabbits today, old man. Today we're shopping for deer. And, if the mountain insists, for the thing that owns the den under the cliff. At the cliff, the leashes came off, and inside a minute, Changzi was gaping at my 10 yuan pensioner. While his 2 dogs worked the ground nose down, Mau Mau stood with his head up, reading the wind itself. A head-up center? The rare kind, the ones who catch scent in the air instead of tracking it off the snow, faster on the find than any ground sniffer. Old man Wang, wherever you are, your dog was underpriced, and I knew it before you did. The dogs led us straight to the battle history. The boys' abandoned deer, eaten to bones overnight, their dead dog nearby, killed by one bear swipe. Bear tracks going one way, and fresh deer sign going another, plus a third-party signature that raised the stakes and my pulse together. Jackal prints, a pack, 12 to 15 strong, with deer blood still warm on the thorns. The mountain's most underrated killers, faster, smarter, better coordinated than any hunting dog. The animal that makes brave dogs hesitate. We're hunting our deer, right now, close. Then a lone jackal appeared on a hillside, barking at us, and both of us instantly looked everywhere except at it, because a visible jackal is the sentry of an invisible circle. Changza wanted to blow its head off. I stopped him. Don't spook the deer beyond it. And we drove it off with the dogs and crested the hill onto the episode's best theater. Down in a closed valley, 13 jackals had 2 sika deer fully encircled, a 200-pound antlered stag standing over a wounded doe, fighting a rotating, choreographed siege. And here I made the coldest call of the trip. We sat down and watched. Let them finish the hunt. Then we robbed the hunters. Because at 200 meters, my honest marksmanship couldn't guarantee 2 deer, but it could absolutely guarantee stolen ones. The mantis stalks the cicada. The oriole holds the high ground with a Type 56. What we watched deserved a nature documentary nobody would air. 2 jackals always dancing at the stag's front, holding its attention, flankers cycling to its rear on a timer, the doe already crippled from behind, their signature move. The villagers don't call them the mountain's cruelest for nothing. And the stag refusing every chance to abandon her and save himself, which, I noted with something between respect and grief, was the exact moment he died. He just didn't know it yet. Bait, feint, turn, strike. They took 200 pounds of antlered fury apart like a work crew, and the second the stag went down, we opened the robbery. Warning shots first, the pack recoiled but held, 13 sets of eyes weighing their sunk cost against our thunder, so I escalated with a sniper's politics. I identified the Jackal King by size and coat, and deliberately shot the soldier standing next to him. 200 meters, headshot, blood spattering across the king's own face. Kill the king, and a leaderless pack mobs you on grief and chaos. Kill the man beside him, and the king himself decides you're unprofitable. The valley emptied in 3 seconds. We came down to claim the prize, 1 jackal carcass, pelt worth a few yuan. Skinning it in front of its watching relatives, however, is what professionals call a bad idea. 1 dead doe, 1 dying stag finished with a mercy round that doubled as a keep your distance memo to the trees, and on the stag's head, the bonus that made the whole trip. 2-branch deer antler velvet, the young stag's first growth, prime medicinal grade, 100 or 200 yuan growing out of a skull. No gutting, no bleeding. Not with that audience. Just rope, a shoulder pole, 300 pounds of deer between 2 men, and the long road home. The road home was the real hunt, with the roles reversed. The pack shadowed us for hours, shapes weaving between trees behind, scouts shortcutting ahead to test our front, melting behind cover every time a barrel rose, patient, vengeful, waiting for dark, when the arithmetic of gun versus pack inverts. 3 warning shots bought silence that never lasted, and by late afternoon, deer drunk and rubber-legged, I made the call that separates hunters who get old from hunters who get remembered. Throw 'em the doe. Changza nearly wept, 100+ pounds of money we'd carried for hours, and I didn't enjoy it either. Greed had kept her on the pole 2 hours past since. But 2 deer meant walking after nightfall with a tireless pack on our scent, and night belongs to them. We dropped the doe, opened her with a knife so the blood smell would out-argue the grudge, and the pack hit that carcass like a settlement offer accepted, all pursuit dissolving in defeating. One last overeager pair chased us anyway and got turned around by a shot. Then quiet. We hauled the stag through the last dark miles by flashlight, Mau Mau on point, the big dogs flanking, and staggered into Changza's yard at 7, where I sat down on the ground in stages, like a folding chair, while Changza bellowed his triumph into the house and got received exactly as the son of a hunter should be. His mother running out in relief, and third brother Wong's voice roaring from the sickbed. "You went to Old Eagle Cliff? Didn't I tell you?"
What if the bear?
every syllable of the scolding lined, unmistakably, with pride. His boy had taken a leopard and a deer inside 1 month. Old men shout loudest when they're bragging. The spoils were divided by firelight in the yard. I took the antler velvet, worth more than half the deer by itself, 150 plus yuan of medicine chopped carefully off the skull, a leg, and the tonic cut that county gentlemen of a certain age pay silly money for. Changzi kept the bulk of the meat, which was the fair weight of the thing. Lin Lihua fed us, tried to bed me down for the night, lost, and instead ran off into the dark with a pound of venison and came back with an escort. Tiezi, one of the 2 boys who'd fled the bear, now staring at our butchered stag in open anguish, computing what his cowardice had cost him, begging on to the next expedition while Tiangzi rubbed it in with the tenderness of a true friend. 3 men, 5 dogs, 3 guns walked me out of the mountains. My flashlight died on the last stretch. Batteries are a rich man's vice. The village trick is to bite them for 2 more days of juice, which I declined, being nearly home. And I tiptoed into my own courtyard at 9:30 to avoid waking anyone, and nearly got harvested. Because my wife, who'd fallen asleep over her sewing waiting for me, woke to a silent figure creeping through the yard, remembered the meat on our rafters and Widow Joe's stolen hen, and met me in the main hall holding a sickle in the dark. We identified each other a heartbeat before agriculture happened. Then she dropped the blade, scolded me for sneaking, tried to go cook for me at 10 at night, and when I took her hands and found them ice through and asked why she hadn't at least sat by the fire, got the answer that undoes me every time. She hadn't noticed getting cold. She'd been busy waiting. I pulled her in by those cold hands and held her warm, and the moonlight can keep the rest. I slept till noon like a felled tree, was woken by 2 inspectors crawling across my bed. "Dad!" Lazy bones. They'd brought their own stool for the ascent, a repeat offense. Finished the donkey shed by dusk, deadline motivation, the lazy beast had fertilized the main hall overnight. Took delivery of the carpenter uncle's donkey saddle from Changzi, and then announced the trip that changed the household's whole weather. Tomorrow, the county. Everyone. The girls came awake mid-yawn like switched-on lamps. My wife ran through her defensive checklist. Who'll watch the house? Mau Mau. Can the donkey pull us all? If he can't, we eat donkey. And surrendered to the tugging at her legs. Because here's what I knew that made this more than an errand. In 6 years of marriage, my wife had almost never left the village. My daughters had never seen a street. And there was an older debt underneath it. Lan Xueying is a Jiangning girl, a big city daughter from a family branded with a bad class background, assigned to the ends of the earth for it, out of contact with her own mother for years, not from any quarrel, but because visiting home requires money, papers, and a country that isn't crawling with road bandits, and we'd never had any of the 3. In my first life, she died without once going back. In this one, later, when the roads and the money allow, I will personally deliver her to her mother's door. For now, the county. A man pays his debts in installments. The expedition ran like a festival. Straw mat in the cart bed, raw material liberated from Zhao Fulin's haystack per our dung futures agreement. Lele solemnly briefing the dogs on home defense. Xiaobao, second treasure, guard the house properly. Tingting delivering a private address to the donkey. Then 2 hours of donkey cart luxury. Half the walking time, none of the leg death, with the twins bouncing in their mother's lap narrating every tree, while I learned live donkey piloting, a certified rural profession, donkey handler. And now I understand why. The beast takes commands in its own dialect and files grievances in mine. The county at 10 a.m. 2 small girls clinging to their mother's coat with saucer eyes, terrified and dazzled in equal measure by the largest crowd of their lives. At the purchasing station, Master Wang came out beaming, produced 2 fancy red lantern candies for the twins, who, beautifully, refused sweets from a stranger until Dad authorized. Pronounced my wife too gentle and pretty to be local. Guessed educated youth in one move. And then, once the family was out of earshot, cheerfully detonated Manager Gao's entire cover story. Valuate joining leopard meat for a friend? The whole station knows. Have you seen his wife? Big, burly woman. And look at the size of him. The county's worst kept secret, and Master Wang wanted a yuan's worth of the same medicine for a friend, too. This purchasing station has a lot of very unwell friends. Upstairs, the friend economy paid out in full. I presented Gao his 3 gin of leopard leg free, as promised, and his bait watched him glow, and then, while his gratitude was still wet, laid the deer tonic on the table. His glasses nearly fogged. He tried one professional frown at my opening price of 50 yuan and folded inside a minute, because a man in his particular situation doesn't haggle hard against the cure. You little brat, you were waiting for me here. Correct, manager. Free meat first, then premium pricing. That's not luck, that's sequencing. 50 yuan for one anatomical item, plus a standing order for anything else Fortifying the Mountain produces, plus a purchasing station manager who now owes me both money favors and silence favors. And with the family reunited at the cart, we rolled for the real destination of the day, Hongqi Street, the county's farmers' market, the biggest street of stalls in Guangzhou County, with 2 little girls about to see abundance for the first time in their lives. Hongqi Street did to my family exactly what I'd hoped. The twins rode my arms through the crowd, firing questions like anti-aircraft guns. Why are there so many people? What is that grandpa doing? While my wife, who hadn't seen the county since before the reforms, kept quietly marveling that all this open private selling was even legal now. And when a candied hawthorn seller came through singing his wares, trailed by the standard procession of children staring like pilgrims, one already crying, there's always one, hawthorn economics run on tears. Tingting's little arm came up and pointed, and I went and bought not 2 skewers, but 3, to the loudly envious commentary of the street's entire under 10 population. 3 at once? I wish my dad. 2 for the girls. And the 3rd pressed into my wife's hand with a whisper against her ear. I have more than 2 little friends. She turned the color of the hawthorn. 21 years old, mother of 2, and nobody had ever bought her candy on a street before. We're fixing everything, Xueying, item by item. The big supply and marketing co-op got the household list, batteries, shampoo, saccharin, tooth powder, and an actual toothbrush. This family has been cleaning teeth with salt water on alternating days. Civilization arrives in small tubes. And then, as the clerk totaled it, a quiet voice said, "Wait, one more." And my wife put down the thing she'd been clutching the whole walk, alcohol and cotton balls. You go up the mountain. You get hurt. You should carry these. The woman who begrudges herself a 16-fen bowl of noodles had been holding first aid supplies for me through half the market, working up the courage to spend my money on my own blood. She's my wife, I told the staring clerk, with more pride than the sentence strictly required. We'll take it. Lunch closed the loop the county trip had opened weeks ago. The noodle shop, the same auntie. Twins! So beautiful. A little thin, auntie will add meat. And she did, sneaking extra meat into the children's bowl only. Discrimination we forgave instantly. And the ordering ritual for the ages. When I asked the girls how much they could eat, Lele gestured a modest bowl. And Tingting, eyes locked on the bone broth cauldron, drool at maximum, swung her bean-sprout arms through the biggest circle her wingspan could physically describe. This much! The family destroyed 6 bowls, 3 of them mine. A man who hauls stags earns his noodles. Tingting finished by presenting her drum-tight belly for official inspection. Daddy, feel it! My tummy says it can't eat anymore. And my wife did her ritual wince at the 90-fen bill and received the household's new fiscal motto. You'll get used to it. Grain station, hay for the donkey, labor relations, and home by 5 to a hero's welcome from 6 dogs, with the twins immediately paying the donkey his wages in hand-fed hay while he brayed like a man promoted. The evening settled into the new normal that would have been science fiction 6 weeks ago. Coarse grain bought cheap from Zhao Fulin for the dog economy, venison and white rice on the table. Me field stripping the Type 56 by lamplight and wiping every part with a brunette skin. Powder residue corrodes. A jammed gun in front of a beast is a biography's last sentence, and I intend to be a long book. While the twins supervised and issued their formal positions on armaments, Tingting doesn't like guns. Tingting likes to eat. Strap on. And then, as I banked the fire after the girls fell asleep mid-bath glow, my wife did her hesitating thing at the edge of a sentence, and out came the next debt on the family ledger. We still haven't returned the grain we borrowed from your elder sister. Her family helped us always, and they barely taste meat once a year. Can we visit tomorrow? My sister, Ren Lan, the one relative who had never once appeared in this story's villain column, because she'd been too busy quietly keeping us alive. Tomorrow, then. The vulture side of the family had gotten its answers. Time the decent side got its reward. I barely slept, and let me tell you why in the strangest sentence of this whole second life. By my internal calendar, I hadn't seen my sister in over 40 years. To everyone else, this was a 20-li donkey ride to Lin Family Village. To me, it was a resurrection appointment. I packed the cart like a tribute caravan, pickled ribs, 2 gin of venison, 2 cured rabbits, fine rice, loaded the family, and stood at her gate with my heart hammering like a boy's. And when Ren Lan opened it, not yet 30, already weathered like 50 by the fields, mid-worry, as it happens, about us, having just been planning to scrape together food from her own family's shortage to carry to my starving daughters, everything I'd rehearsed for 40 years collapsed into one word: sister. Her first reaction, naturally, alarm. A visit from the broke little brother means catastrophe. That's the only grammar she knew me in. Her second reaction, on hefting my sack of wild vegetables in her kitchen and finding rabbits, ribs, mystery venison, and polished white rice, pure terror. She yanked me into the kitchen by the sleeve, voice shaking. "Chang Ming, where did this come from? Tell me you haven't gone down a wrong road." Because in her universe, there was no legal path between my poverty and this sack. It took my testimony, Lan Xueying's corroboration, and a promise she could verify with the village before her heart came down out of her throat and settled instantly into the next worry, because that's what she's made of. Hunting? The mountains? You be careful. Then she tried to send the whole sack home with us, got outflanked by 2 toddlers presenting their newly fattened bellies as evidence of surplus. Auntie can eat it. Lele is chubby now. Surrendered and started cooking her brother's meat for her own children for the first time in a year, glowing. The comedy detonated outside, meanwhile, in the best 1983 way possible. My brother-in-law, Lin Renyi, walking home with the kids, got accosted by his neighbor, Lin Haichang, storming out of the village with a shoulder pole and a grievance. "How am I supposed to eat my lunch with your house smelling like stewed pork? You sneak-bought meat and told nobody, you old rascal." Poor honest Renyi stood there protesting he hadn't bought meat in months, wallet as his witness, while his own children's stomachs began growling at the rumor. And then the 3 of them rounded the corner into the smell radius of their own kitchen and had to reprocess reality. Ribs, bubbling, at their house, on a random Tuesday. The meat that broke the neighbor's lunch was mine. There are worse legacies. The dinner that followed was the mirror image of every scene at Rendikai's table, and I sat in it like a man warming up after years outside. 2 families around one table. My sister's kids, Lele and Huan, 15 and 16. 2 years of half-work schooling and a childhood of field labor behind them, staring at the meat plates with the disbelief of children who got pork once a year, released from politeness by their uncle, and demolishing it. My twins dragging Huan off by both hands to play the second she finished. "Sister, play, play!" She'd babysat them as babies, and they remembered. My sister happy in the specific way of a woman whose oldest worry just dissolved at her own table. And Lin Renyi, the plain, honest man who'd married my sister on the strength of exactly those 2 adjectives, and spent years quietly subsidizing my family out of his own children's portions, broke out the village's famous home brew to toast his suddenly solvent brother-in-law. Here I held an unfair advantage I saw no reason to disclose. In my first life, after I lost everything, I spent years marinated in grief liquor. My tolerance is a geological formation. An hour later, my brother-in-law delivered his verdict. "How can you drink like this? You've been hiding this," and laid his honest head on the table, asleep, while my sister went off to make sober-up egg soup for the last man standing, who was fine, and being watched by a wife who'd spent the whole session radiating drink less at him, and now wanted to know, over the snoring, exactly how he'd done that to poor Renyi. The farewell was the last battle of the day, and the sweetest. 20 yuan pressed into my sister's hand, rejected, repressed, rejected. "Buy chickens, catch a piglet, live well." You have a family. Until my wife flanked her. You carried food to us for years and never let us refuse. And the alliance broke her. 20 yuan in a house that had skipped meat at New Year. First installment on a 40-year debt. The ledger stays open. And 2 smaller items for the file. Renlon whispered something to my wife at the cart that turned her scarlet all the way home and remains classified to this day. And my brother-in-law's homebrew, genuinely sweet, rich, better than half the branded liquor of the coming decades, planted a business idea I filed under not yet. In 1983, in a county this remote, bottling and selling that wine is a fast route to a public criticism session. The golden 80s are real, but so are the men who got rich 1 year early and got invited to eat peanuts for it. Patience. The country is thawing on a schedule I've already read. Then the mountain called in the sequel. Changzi had been haunting my gate for 2 days, deer fever burning. Tiezi chickened out again when it was just us two. So at dawn we launched Old Eagle Cliff, round 2. 3 men now, Tiedzi's courage having returned with company. 5 dogs, 3 guns, small game ignored on principle. The trip opened with the mountain's best slapstick. A panicked rabbit ran headfirst into a boulder at our feet and knocked itself out. Your ancestors hit trees, I told the sack as I bagged it, and you had to innovate. And then delivered the classic second expedition tax, hours of stale tracks and empty valley. The herd had crossed out. Tiezi performed his grief. Hunting keeps no appointments. You eat the empty days with the fat ones. Except the valley wasn't quite empty. Mau Mau's bark snapped every gun up. 3 wolves on the valley floor, howling their keep away. No pack above them. We checked the high ground first. 3 wolves below you is a hunt. 30 above you is an obituary. Tiedzi's gun was already rising when I knocked the barrel skyward mid-shot, because I'd seen what he hadn't. The she-wolf in the middle had recently whelped. And no, this wasn't the hunter's mercy code. Wolves and boars are exempt from the no mothers rule. And I hold no sentimental brief for wolves. This was inventory logic. A nursing mother means a den, and a den means pups, and pups mean money and possibilities. So we let them flee and sent the dogs to push, and what followed was a masterclass in why old hunters respect wolves more than tigers. The male wolf broke from the dog brawl and charged us. 3 armed men, 0 chivalry, 3 simultaneous shots, done. While the she-wolf staged her breakout and then ran the oldest play in the wolf book, led our dogs on a wide, brush-tangled circle away from home, and doubled back to die at her own front door. Cunning enough to fool the dogs, not cunning enough to fool a man who's read this script. When 5 dogs finally pinned her at the den mouth, and she turned her head, not toward the dogs, toward the cave, I'll admit the thought crossed my mind. I let it keep crossing. The mountain runs on jungle law, and had our positions been reversed, she'd have opened my throat without a committee meeting. Don't worry, I told her quietly. Your cubs will sell for a good price. And ended it clean. The den paid out 6 wolf pups, month-old, milk-fed, already crouched in fighting stances the size of teacups, including one that made all 3 of us go quiet. A white wolf cub. Albinism, technically. A defect that gets a wild pup abandoned or eaten before its first year, which is exactly why white wolves are legend rare and treated as omens. In my hands, an omen. Male, healthy, furious. I offered the honest split, 2 pups each, and got the reaction I'd fully priced in. Both mountain boys recoiled like I'd offered them lit fireworks. Those things can't be raised. 1 ate every chicken in a man's yard. They only work in cages. Kaoshan has hunted these ranges for generations and never once fielded a tame wolf. That's how hard it is. But I'd spent a previous lifetime watching the rare men who managed it, and I knew the trick they didn't. You don't raise a wolf alone. You raise it drowned in dogs. Pups among puppies. Minimum 2 dogs per wolf, so the wolf grows up believing it's a dog, while the dogs pick up a controlled dose of wolf. My yard currently holds 5 white dragons and an old sergeant. The ratios work. So the men who wanted no pups took the 2 dead adults' pelts and meat happily, and I walked out of the mountains at 8 at night with a sack that occasionally growled, 6 future soldiers, one of them white as the snow itself, to a main hall where the kerosene lamp still burned, and my wife sat sewing, waiting up again. No sickle this time, Progress. The pups got processed with cold, professional method. A straw pen apart from the dogs, and Unya, the old wolf breaker's first rule, no food. You starve a fresh-caught wolf pup a few meals so that the first meal comes from your hand and means something. They cried their tiny hunger at the yard, and I ignored it with a heart of commerce. "Are these puppies?" my wife asked, delighted, and recalibrated fast at the answer. "Selling them in the county," I added, mostly truthfully. And then the lamp-lit domestic scene ambushed me better than any wolf. My wife holding up the 2 finished little jackets, pale yellow daisies, sewn stitch by stitch through her nights, the twins' first non-patched clothes in their lives, asking, "Aren't they beautiful?" with the exact expression Lele wears when she wants praise. "Beautiful," I said, not entirely looking at the jackets, and got caught doing it. She'd washed her hair. It was down. The lamp was doing what kerosene lamps have done to men since kerosene. She was my wife, waiting up for me, in a house we'd fed and warmed together. So I picked her up, sewing and all, over one squeaked protest about the children hearing, and carried her to my bed, and drew the curtain on this chapter of the recap like a gentleman. Dawn brought the reckoning, in the form of 2 small bailiffs standing on their stool at my bedside. "Dad, why is Mom in your bed?" Tingting already attempting to climb in and complete the family sandwich, while I performed emergency blanket diplomacy, and my scarlet wife hissed, "This is your fault," at me, with her face in the pillow. The crisis was settled with the currency that settles everything in this house, a candied Hawthorne futures contract, and my wife spent the morning being suspiciously doted on by 2 guilt-ridden toddlers. "Mommy, Lele will massage you. Mommy sleeps with us tonight," while I cooked her sweetened eggs and radiated smugness until ordered into the kitchen. Married 6 years. Honeymoon, week 7 of the second life. We're doing everything out of order, and I recommend it. Then the operation gained its final crew member. As I set out for the hunting cabin with the dog squad, feet came pounding up the road. Ren dashing, breathless, earth gun over his shoulder and his. Aunt's elderly guard dog on a string, formally applying to the mountain trade. My dad agreed, and you get noodles in the county if you follow Brother Chang Ming. I ran the interview on the spot. Total obedience in the mountains, my rules, my split of any game, and hit the wall of the man's whole character. He tried to refuse wages. "I'll just carry things. I don't understand hunting." I overruled him with policy. Nobody works my mountain for free. And just like that, the payroll grew. One simple, honest ox of a man who'd hauled a cart 50 li without complaint. Exactly the back I needed for the day the mountain gives up something too big for one pole. His aunt's dog, a skinny yellow house guard that had clearly never smelled a game trail, was diplomatically benched after one day. Not every hire works out. And the day itself was Academy Day. The technique is called dog dragging. You can train pups yourself, slowly, or you can let a veteran dog do it. And Mau Mau took to instruction like he'd been waiting years for a classroom. Chasing chipmunks at puppy speed so the little ones could keep up, herding fleeing game deliberately into their ambushes, letting second treasure make the catch and take the glory. Rewarded with the full ceremony, a caught prey must be praised. That's how a hunting dog's soul is built. A dozen chipmunks and 2 raided nut caches later, with Dashing blissfully elbow-deep in the dirty work of skinning and burrow digging, I confirmed the discovery that kept making my 10-yuan dog look cheaper by the day. Xiaobao is a head-up center, too. Wind reader, like Mau Mau, plus fierce, plus clever, plus first to break trail. The raw profile of a future lead dog, the one that runs point for a whole pack. Give me a season, and this yard fields a hunting unit no village in the county can match. An old professor, 5 white dragons coming into their growth, and 6 wolves being raised to believe they're dogs. Then Mau Mau's whimper call came up from a mountain hollow, the "small prey, come quietly" signal, and we ran the ridge to find the dogs holding position on a dozen-strong flock of wild chickens scratching in the snow, Dashing vibrating beside me like a struck bell. And here Dashing's useless earth gun earned its keep. Against a packed flock, a rifle takes 1 bird. A blunderbuss load of iron shot takes a neighborhood. I borrowed it, tamped powder and pellets like my father's generation, and 1 thunderclap dropped 6 or 7 chickens at a stroke. Dogs charging on the gunshot, Mau Mau snatching the last escapee out of the air, puppies mopping up the wounded. Then the day filed its comedy complaint. A giant yellow weasel, 6-7 pounds, triple any weasel I'd ever seen, wearing a pelt of genuinely lovely bright gold, caught mid-theft of a wild chicken, and the pursuit that followed taught everyone present a lesson in chemical warfare. It skunked Mau Mau full in the face mid-lunge, one frozen sneeze fit, then back on the chase, the pro. Got treed, played musical branches against 4 dogs, and when my arrow finally took it off the limb, it discharged its entire remaining arsenal on the way down, a stench that made me gag at 30 paces, and taught me a rule for the ledger. Never again send dogs after a big weasel. The pelt's not worth the biological incident. The only man unaffected was Dashing, who waded in and picked it up barehanded, cheerful as laundry day. He may be the most valuable piece of equipment I own. The riverbank finished the day's syllabus. No otter sign. Their pelts fund kingdoms, but the males wander like salesmen. 2 squirrels, and then Mau Mau's whimper at a reedy little pond, where he dug open a grass-plugged burrow mouth, went quiet, and told me by silence what he'd found. A muskrat, water rat, the fur trader's soft gold, plush-pelted, musk-glanded, coat-trade currency, which had slipped out its underwater exit and was holding its breath somewhere in the pool. So we waited it out. The thing can dive for 5-6 minutes, but I can stand still for longer. And when the ripples finally broke, I put an arrow through it at spitting distance, and Monte Mau Mau hit the water like a launched log to retrieve, followed, magnificently, by 3 puppies who had never swum in their lives, learned on the spot by flailing, and emerged to shake themselves and file small, formal complaints. First swim lesson? Passed. The retrieve came back unmarked. No tooth tears, no chewing, a working dog's clean mouth. And that's the whole difference between a pet and a colleague. Days total, with a late start, 12 chipmunks, 7 chickens, 1 weasel, 1 muskrat. Dashing, shown the hunting cabin, my base, bring no one here without my say-so. Don't worry, Brother Changming, chest thump, fed smoked meat until his eyes glazed, and handed 2 wild chickens over his own objections at the village edge, walked home moist-eyed. I pay my people. That's the whole secret the Ren Chengchais of the world never learn. Loyalty is the cheapest, expensive thing there is. Home delivered its nightly dividends in order, my wife taking the sack from my hands with an ease that's become its own kind of intimacy. 2 daughters demanding to be held, and then suddenly, urgently, demanding to be put down, sprinting inside on mysterious business that turned out to be the fashion show. Both twins reappearing in their finished daisy jackets, the first new clothes of their entire lives, twirling and preening. "Daddy, is Lele's new clothes pretty?" While their mother stood by, biting down a smile at her own handiwork. I laid the praise on with a trowel, and the girls returned fire with the household's finest diplomacy. "Daddy's shy, Mommy's pretty." And I looked at my blushing wife over their heads and noted, for the record, that the children's flattery instincts are not inherited from her side. And the evening closed on the yard's newest citizens, the wolf pups, hunger-broken past their snarling now, flat and miserable in their straw, the twins hovering over them in an agony of pity. "Feed them quickly, Daddy," followed by Tingting attempting intimidation-based encouragement. "If you don't eat, Tingting will eat it for you." While I cooked their first meal from my hand, minced chipmunk in porridge, the taming meal, the one that starts the long con of convincing 6 wolves they were born dogs. They'd hold out a while longer on principle. Principles lose to porridge. Everything in this village eventually does. It took one evening. Ting came running with the bulletin. "Daddy, the wolf cubs are eating!" and dragged me by one finger to the pen, where 5 pups had emptied the bowl, and the 6th, the runty gray one, was too weak to compete. I hand-fed it separately and gave it honest odds, 50-50. And next morning, the wolf business closed its retail phase. County trip with Dashing, whose response to, "These are wolf cubs," was the purest sentence in his vocabulary. "Brother Changming, you're awesome." 4 healthy pups sold at the black market for 20 yuan, and the 2 defective ones, the weak, gray, and the white, insultingly appraised at 1 yuan each, came home with me instead. Because the dealer was pricing fur, and I was pricing futures. Raised right among 5 white dragons, even a half-successful wolf is breeding stock for generations of hunting dogs, and a full success is a legend on a leash. I named the gray Fucai, and the white Xiaolan. Live or die, that's your business. From today, I'm your master. And within a week, the white one was trailing Xiaobao's gang around the yard, wagging its tail, having learned the gesture from the dogs like a foreign phrase. Wolves don't refuse to wag. They just need someone worth wagging at. The same county trip fattened the ledger. Weasel and muskrat pelts alone brought 85. The trip totaled 121.3. And dropped a landmark in passing. The county's first department store had opened that very day. 2 floors, mobbed, 20 people fighting over 2 12-inch Panda televisions. I stood in that crowd, running the future through my head. A TV for the girls, useless, the village has no electricity yet. A butterfly sewing machine for my wife, she's been hand-stitching the family's entire wardrobe by lamplight. That machine is moving up the list fast. Bought neither, and instead spent 4.37 on the small program. A new style hair ornament for my wife, and 2 pairs of golden butterfly hair clips with little plastic beads. Because at home, a tribunal awaited. 2 small plaintiffs, deeply wronged. Daddy went to the county without Lele, and bought Mommy a present, and nothing for... Collapsing mid-grievance into pure joy as the butterflies came out of the paper. Clipped into 2 heads of ram's horn braids, the butterflies trembled gold with every running step around the yard, and my wife watched her daughters orbit like moths and smiled the smile I'm collecting this whole life to see. Her verdict on her own gift: why buy more? I have one. Translation, per the household dictionary, thank you, I love it. She wore both. Then the story exhaled, a stretch of the good, slow days I was actually reborn for. Dashing and I worked the near mountains at an easy rhythm, banking another 100 yuan in pelts and 2 more muskrats, and I paid him a full big unity note, which detonated his entire family. Old Ren Shunfu appeared at my gate that evening, practically bowing, offering banquets, a man whose simple son had just out-earned the brigade. The village noticed too. Envious young men began forming hunting parties up the slopes. I wished them well and privately gave it a month. Everyone sees the hunters meet. Nobody sees the knights in the open, or the ones who stay on the mountain forever. The mountain feeds those who beg from it, and eventually it collects. My wife and I replanted the long-dead vegetable garden with county seeds, assisted by 2 dirt-smeared apprentices working their little bottoms skyward in dead serious imitation of their mother. Dad will eat vegetables grown by Gen Z now. And one warm afternoon, I rolled up my trousers in the village river and caught lunch by hand, the old way. Fingers into the rock crevices, quick grab at the head. Half a basin of minnows, whitebait, and 6 small crucian carp. Fish in this village is a holiday food, not because it's scarce, but because it costs oil to cook right, and oil is the true currency of 1983. We had oil now. So, crispy fried spicy minnows, milk-white crucian soup gone golden with scallions, stir-fried venison leg, the twins eating deboned fish from my chopsticks and pronouncing verdicts through fishtail mustaches. My wife smiling more in one dinner than she used to in a season. Me destroying 3 bowls of rice like the ditch digger I technically still am on paper. And the yard kept scaling with the ambitions. I drew up the next construction phase, proper stone dog kennels by the donkey shed, a big run for the pack, and a separate small pen for breeding females, because 5 white dragons, 2 wolves, and 1 old professor no longer fit in a main hall, and the next generation of this pack is already an entry in my business plan. A pigsty after that, a new house after that. I was loading the donkey cart for a stone run, all of it humming along, when a rattle drum sounded down the lane, and my daughters materialized at the gate like iron filings at a magnet. A traveling peddler, the walking department store of the villages, 60-something, shoulder pole hung with glass-topped cases of needles, buttons, rouge, toys, and snacks, trailed by every child in Liugouzi. I walked them over personally, and not just for the fun. The early 80s were the boom years of child snatching, and in poor counties like ours, the stories were close and recent. My girls don't stand at gates alone. A father who has already lost his daughters once does not do probabilities twice. At the case, my children broke my heart in the usual 2 directions. Lele offered anything, politely declined the whole inventory, showing the peddler her butterfly clip. Daddy already bought Lele this. A child so trained to want nothing that a peddler was visibly moved. So I made it an order. Pick something. She chose, after long deliberation, a tiny rattle drum of her own. Tingting promptly abandoned her snack claim to copy her sister. I bought 2 drums and the snacks over my wife's spoiling protest, settled by Tingting's solemn pledge. Tingting will not become a bad child. And the yard spent the evening full of running feet and drum clatter. 3 yuan, haggled down from 360. The peddler left richer, not as rich as me. Then Changzi appeared at the gate with his rifle and the summons I'd been waiting half a month for. Wild Boar Ridge, tomorrow, 7 o'clock. The village expedition, the big one. 2 days, a night in the deep mountains, and the goodbyes ran their course. My wife's, "Is it dangerous?" met with, "8 of us, plus your husband. Even the mountain god can't handle me." She spat the bad luck off that joke twice, my educated youth wife, superstitious as any granny where I'm concerned. Tingting counting the length of 2 days on her fingers and coming up worried. The gear laid out with sacrament care, rifle stripped and checked, ammunition counted, knife, rope, flashlight, dry rations, because third brother Wang's parting ledger of Wild Boar Ridge injuries was not a decoration. And Dasheng briefed to hold the fort and watch the cabin, now that half the village's young men were romping the near slopes playing hunter. The expedition itself was a university. 8 men, a dozen dogs, a route Kaoshan has walked for generations. Wolf packs shattered us twice and did the math and left, and by late day we crested onto Wild Boar Ridge. Low ground, brush and rock, a big natural waterhole, early snowmelt, oak stands dropping acorns, a purpose-built boar paradise, and I read it aloud like a land surveyor. This was where the trip paid for itself before the first shot. Young Xiaohu, Changzi's 16-year-old cousin, first time out, asking, "But where are the boars?" And me pointing out the rub marks on the tree beside Uncle Irvin's elbow, the fresh sign in the grass, and then, when the old leader tested me straight up, "So, where's the sounder hiding, young man?" Calling it. The winnowing basket hollow on the sunny slope, southeast facing, wind sheltered, first sun of the day. If I were a boar, I'd sleep exactly there. The scouting climb proved it, piglets visible at the edge of the hollow, and the veteran hunters recalibrated the stranger from Liugouzi in real time, Uncle Irden grinning. "You think like me, you little rascal." I also banked the priceless stuff no purchase station sells, the map beyond the ridge, Lan Chang Mountain to the southeast, Jiutou Mountain past it, and between them a swamp that keeps men out, filed for a future I could already feel taking shape. And we did not attack at dusk, which was its own lesson for Xiaohu. Kill boars at nightfall, and you either sleep beside gutted carcasses that summon every predator on the ridge, or haul rotting meat home. Dawn kills only. Greed is a schedule, and the mountain grades it. The night was the expedition's masterpiece of inherited wisdom. A cave, taken from a bear by the grandfather's generation, cleaned, kept, sealed with rocks and timber between visits like a mountain hotel room, grass and kindling stocked inside. 8 men around a fire in a bear's confiscated house, eating dry rations to a soundtrack of things roaring outside, watches set in turns. Kaoshan doesn't just hunt these mountains, it has infrastructure in them. I fell asleep cataloging everything I'd steal from my own. Operations, in the most respectful sense of the word, and at first light we stood over the sunny hollow, and Uncle Ren said one word, "Up," and a dozen dogs poured downslope with Mau Mau in the flood, and the hollow exploded into squeals as the sounder woke to its worst morning. 2 big boars, 300 pounds apiece, breaking cover first into the gun's daylight. What followed was the difference between hunting and battle management, and I got a front-row education in both. Xiaohu vibrating beside me, "Brother Ren, chase them!" while I calmly seated the magazine and clicked off the safety, because a sounder is sows and piglets, panic runners, not fighters, and 8 men had plenty of boar to go around. No herd this size empties in one flush. The team split by veteran instinct. The middle-aged hunter took 3 men after the first pair. Uncle Ren and Changzi peeled off when a third 200-pounder broke. And suddenly, the hillside was down to me, a gunless 16-year-old, Mau Mau, and 1 borrowed Wolf Blue. Which is exactly when the mountain dealt me the hand of the trip. A 300-pound sow burst from the brush into the 2 dogs. Wolf Blue got an ear and was nearly slung off his feet. Mau Mau clamped the other ear like a blacksmith's tongs and would not be shaken. And while I held fire, shoot into a dog pile and you buy a dead dog with your own bullet. Every man on that ridge knew it, which is why nobody had fired yet. A yellow-haired, half-grown boar broke west past the whole tangle into clean air. One shot, head down. And the sow, tearing free in the chaos and bolting for the oak grove, met my second bullet behind the tree she thought she'd cleared. In through the eye, out the snout, dropped mid-stride without a sound. 2 boars, 2 shots, maybe 4 seconds apart, with Xiaohu screaming color commentary beside me. And then the hollow really opened. 4 more pigs erupting from hidden dens in the brush, and I dropped a third. Another yellow hair the dogs pinned for my knife, clipped a 4th in the rump that got away, and stood there reloading over 3 dead boars while my heart informed me, privately, that the calm had been a performance it would now be billing me for. The count-up rearranged my standing in Kaoshan for good. Taiza came back hauling 1 sow and lost the power of speech at my kill pile. Xiaohu narrated my 2-shot double to anyone in earshot like a radio drama, and Uncle Ren, arriving with Changzi and their hard-won 200-pounder, looked at 3 carcasses, then at me, and gave the verdict old hunters give maybe twice a decade. Better than I was in my youth. Total for 8 guns, 5 wild boars, 2 300-pound sows, 1 200, 2 yellow hairs, a complete quota in a single morning on a hunt that usually eats days. 3 of the 5, mine. Luck, I said modestly, plus 2 good dogs. Both true, neither the whole story. The whole story is that a man with 40 years of accumulated caution and a Type 56 is a different species of hunter, and the Ridge had just found that out. Then the Ridge sent its collection agents in order of nerve. The blood of 5 pigs is a broadcast, and the first responders were old acquaintances. A jackal pack, 18 or 19 strong, bigger than the old Eagle Cliff mob, and bolder, strolling toward our kills in open contempt of 2 men and 2 dogs. No diplomacy this time. With 7 guns in earshot, I shot 2 dead on sight, then a third when they only fell back to lurk. Then Changzi added a 4th for staring. And still they circled at the tree line, patient as creditors, because that's what jackals are. And then Mau Mau's fur went up off his spine, and he gave the other bark, the big predator bark, and a yellow shadow flowed up into a distant tree. A leopard, drawn to the same dinner bell, close enough to identify, and too far and too tree-screened to shoot. It did the leopard thing, watched, calculated, declined the odds of 8 rifles in daylight, and the jackals, emboldened by everyone else's caution, kept probing until the whole team lined up and gave the pack a volley, 7 guns at once, that finally rewrote their risk assessment and emptied the Ridge. A morning of 5 boars, 4 dead jackals, and 1 leopard's rain check. Wild Boar Ridge doesn't have visitors. It has participants. The haul-out ran on Kaoshan law, and the law impressed me more than the hunting. Pigs slung on poles, the strong boys carrying, and me and Uncle Eren assigned to guard, pointedly excused from labor, the guest gun honored, with hungry wolves ghosting the column at a respectful distance the whole way down and deciding, correctly, that we were not on the menu. And at the village edge, the division. By ancient rule, when the village organizes a hunt, hunters take half. The village splits the other half even, every household in Kaoshan eating boar this week off our morning, which is why 8 men will always volunteer for the next one. And then Uncle Eren, over my non-objection, awarded me a bonus outside the formula. You killed 3 alone. Take a yellow hair whole. 90 pounds of the tenderest pork on the Ridge, ratified by the whole column, because fair men recognize arithmetic. I declined the celebration drink. My wife and children are waiting, Uncle, and got the old man's highest compliment on the way out. A man who hurries home to his family. Good. Then 50 li of dark, with a boar on my back and Mau Mau on point, to the exact scene I'd walked toward the whole way. My wife at the gate, with a twin on each arm, both girls detonating at the flashlight beam. It really is, Dad! Then clamping onto my blood-soaked legs in defiance of all laundry logic. Then catching their mother, smiling and cheerfully selling her out. Mommy missed Daddy too. That's why she carried us out. Tingting is a big kid. Tingting came by herself. While the accused turned scarlet and changed the subject with the skill of a diplomat. We gutted the boar by flashlight, held aloft by 2 straining, puffing volunteers who refused relief until their arms gave out. Not tired. Tingting can't lift it anymore. Is Daddy done? and when I begged off dinner effort and suggested leftovers, was informed with great solemnity by Tingting that there were no leftovers, but that Xiaobao's bowl still had some, and would Daddy like her to fetch it? My daughter, offering me the dog's dinner, with love. I have eaten at banquets that moved me less. Next morning was pig slaughter day. The yellow hair was staying home. First meat this household ever kept whole instead of selling, and the work drew the village like a fair. Dashing conscripted at dawn. His response to the boar, "Take me next time, Brother Changming. I want to hunt wild boars too." A scald pit dug at the gate over the twins' safety commentary. What if Tingting falls in it? Old Man Guo broadcasting the news at fiber optic speed, an audience assembling to narrate my rise in real time, and, at the edge of the crowd, hanging back where the villagers pointedly left a gap around him, a thin, nervous ghost from my first youth. Zhou Shengli, my childhood best friend. Now, the village's resident petty thief, chicken lifter, trap robber, disowned by his own father, abandoned by a wife who fled home in disgust, the man everyone in Liugouzi crosses the road to avoid. Brother Changming, need a hand? Here's the ledger nobody else in that crowd was reading. In all his thieving years, Sheng Li never once touched my yard. And decades deep in my memory sits an older debt. When a tongue-tied ditch digger fell for an untouchable city girl, it was gossip king Sheng Li who found the go-between, worked the channels, and made my marriage happen. Every person at this pig scald exists downstream of that favor, including the two little girls holding the flashlight. I'm no saint, and I believe don't audit souls. My system is simpler. Good to me is good, and useful is useful. And I was one reliable back short of my own Wild Boar Ridge expedition. Come on then, I said, to the visible shock of the entire audience, and of Sheng Li himself. Boar bristles are murder to scrape. By afternoon, he'd asked the question I'd been herding him toward all day. Brother Changming, take me hunting? I'll do whatever you say. And my crew hit full strength. One honest ox, one cunning rat, both of them mine, both of them fed at my table that noon until a full pot of boar and winter melon vanished. Dasheng contributed the winter melon by sprinting home for it uninvited. That man's loyalty has a door-busting quality. Both sent home with a pound of meat each over ritual protests. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, my wife had unpacked a treasure I never knew I'd married. Jiangning ham, her home city's famous cure, salt worked in stages, a craft she'd carried through 15 years of poverty with no pork to practice it on, now finally meeting a pig, with two flower-faced assistants slapping the meat importantly beside her. The household was curing its first winter stores of its own raising, and across the village, per the usual courier, Aunt Zhou Fenghua received the bulletin of my newest boar and reportedly needed to sit down. Then Sheng Li came back after dark, twisting his hands, and paid for his whole rehabilitation in one sentence. Go Sheng and Ergo from Erlong Bridge came asking about you. I told them what the village says. They're coming to shake you down in a day or two. Be careful. The two worst hooligans of the neighboring valley, armed, pack-running, famous for daring what even our local rats wouldn't. I read his face the way 60 years of con men taught me, and found only guilt and warning. So the trap got built with a clear conscience. Wife and daughters delivered to my sisters at dawn, no explanation, a mistake I'd pay for, more on that presently. Dogs locked in the main hall, loyal dogs charge gunmen and die, not today. Dasheng and Sheng Li staged out of sight, rice steaming, ribs stewing, the picture of one soft, lucky man home alone, and me in the kitchen with the Type 56 loaded, safety off, listening for the gate. They kicked it in on schedule, 4 of them, 3 knives and an earth gun. Go Sheng opening with the classic script, "That boar was ours first. What do you say to that?" The shakedown men have run on the meek since the invention of meekness. What they had not priced in, the meek man walking out of his kitchen with a military rifle already leveled. Da Sheng erupting from cover to kick Go Sheng several meters into a kneeling position, and when Go tried, "I don't believe you dare fire," a bullet parting his hair mid-sentence. He wet himself where he stood, dropped the earth gun with a clatter, and the raid was over in 9 seconds. What followed was the part I'd scripted, because fear is a language, and these men only read it fluent. Da Sheng asking, "What do we do with them, Brother Changming?" Me, conversational. Beat them first, then we'll see. And Sheng Li, right on cue, with a thoughtful sigh, killing them here is such paperwork. Better wait till they're in the mountains. Things happen in the mountains all the time. Two men chatting logistics over four kneeling hooligans, and the hooligans' entire nervous systems filing for bankruptcy. By the time village chief Zhou Fulin stormed in with 10 villagers, alerted by the gunshot arriving in full former militia commander glory, the courtyard smelled of urine and repentance, and I got to play my last card in front of the whole gallery. They broke in armed, uncle. That's highway robbery. The law says I can shoot them where they kneel. Technically true in 1983, and worth more as theater than any beating. Zhou Fulin, no fool, took custody with magnificent ceremony, had the four tied to the trees at the village gate for a full day's public exhibition. The news, suitably inflated, was in every village in the valley by nightfall. Go Sheng's gang wet themselves at Ren Changming's gate, and privately marveled at when, exactly, the honest boy had gotten terrifying. Uncle, about 40 years ago by my calendar. And to Sheng Li's nervous, will they retaliate? I gave my crew the quiet, true answer over dinner. The mountains are large, men are lost in them every year, and if those four ever feel brave again, they're welcome to test which kind of year it is. Sheng Li looked at his childhood friend for a long moment, recognized nothing, and relaxed completely. Some protecting you buy with fear. It's cheaper than the alternative and lasts longer. One bill remained, and it was the only one that stung. At my sister's that evening, my two smallest intelligence officers met the donkey cart with a full, whispered briefing. Mom was naughty and didn't eat properly. No, sister, Mom is unhappy. Mom praised us, so she's not angry at us. Dad, Tingting thinks Mom is upset because of you. Go comfort her. 3.5 years old and already out-analyzing the KGB. They were right, of course. I'd shipped my wife off twice with no explanation, and she'd known, she always knows, and spent the day picking at her food while my sister worried. So I stopped hiding it, told the whole thing plainly to both women. Some scoundrels heard I had money. It's handled, weathered my sister's outrage. Is there no law? And an immediate offer of 20 Lin cousins. And rode home beside a silent wife, while Lele climbed the cart bed to tug my sleeve and stage whisper the situation report. Dad, Mom is unhappy. I know, little one. Your father is learning, slower than he'd like, that the last wall between him and this family is the one he builds himself, the old habit of carrying everything alone, because for 40 years there was no one to carry it with. That wall comes down too. She waited up for me with a sickle once. She's earning the truth going forward. All of it. Every time. So tally the season, because I've been keeping this ledger since the morning I woke up young. 10 weeks ago, this household was 4 people starving on moldy sweet potato strips, 1 day from giving a daughter away, in a village that called me a loafer and relatives who wouldn't lend us grain. Tonight, over 400 jannah through the books and climbing, a rifle and an earth gun in the rack, a donkey and cart in a shed I built, 2 hens in lay, a fortress cabin in the mountains with a stocked pantry, 5 white dragons growing into soldiers, 2 wolves learning to be dogs, 1 old head-up center worth his weight in pelts, a crew of 2 loyal men on wages, a brotherhood in Kaoshan Village, buyers by name in the township and the county, and inside the mud walls, the only numbers that count, a wife with silk in her hair who fights me for the last steamed bun, and 2 round-cheeked girls in daisy jackets and golden butterflies who were dead 40 years and are now asleep against their mother, dreaming, if there's any justice, about candied hawthorn. The river took everything from me once. This time, I got to the riverbank first. And the mountain isn't done. It's barely started. The day after tomorrow, my own crew walks to Wild Boar Ridge without the village. 3 men, an earth gun with a confiscated pedigree, and a cave I know the way to now. Beyond the ridge sits Lan Chang Mountain, and beyond that, Jiutou Mountain, sealed behind a swamp no one crosses, which, in the language I speak, means no one has hunted it in living memory. There's a leopard out there who's seen my face, a bear that old Eagle Cliff still owes me, and somewhere deeper, in the place the old men lower their voices about, the striped debt every hunter's ledger keeps on its last page. First pig, buy the sled load. Second bear, pending. The mountain knows what's third. So do I.